And we're online. So, hi everybody. With me today is Gareth from the dmg.info, a person who does not require an introduction. So, Gareth, before we start, let's say hello to everyone in the chat. So, hi Charlene. Hi, the dmg.info.
Hey,
See,
that's me.
yeah, that's you. You're in there too. Earthman Brick. Mia. Hi Mia. Hi Robert. And RFD Hobby and Campaign Train. Hi to both of you gentlemen. And
Hello,
oh yeah,
everybody.
and Sean and Scatter Train. Hi everyone. So Gareth, I know you wear a lot of hats like YouTuber, sorry, serial YouTuber, writer, co-author of Questgiverse, Guildmaster on the Tabletop Crafters Guild. How about you tell us a bit about yourself?
Well, I am a Eurafro-Australasian, so I was born in Africa to an Australian mother and a South African father, and I now live in Australia. And I've traveled the world, and I've done a lot of weird and wonderful things in my life. My first real job was in the TAB totalizator for horse racing. And I've worked in radio, I've worked in computers, I've worked in debt collection, I've worked in retail, I've done all kinds of weird and wonderful things. I did an undergraduate degree in English psychology and economics, and I have two postgraduate degrees, one in documentary film theory and practice, and one in narrative film theory and practice. My master's thesis was on the universal structure of everything narrative. I've been messing around with computers my whole life. I started on ZX Spectrum, BBC Micro, Commodore 64, and all the weird and wonderful things from back in the day. DOS 4, I think I started on for PC. I did have a Mac, but we dual booted with DOS for all those techie people out there. I'm not a Mac person, never have been. And yeah, that's basically me. I do a couple of YouTube channels too.
Yeah, you keep yourself busy,
Occasionally.
don't you?
Yeah, I keep myself busy. I'm married and I have a 9-month-old son whose name is Luke. And everyone says, "Oh, that's a great biblical name." I said, "No, that's a great Star Wars name." And my wife suggested the name Luke, and she says, "Luke's a great name." I said, "Luke's a fantastic name. Let's go with Luke." And she was like, "That was very, very easy. Why was this so easy?" And of course, the moment he was born, and the nurse hands me my son, I go, "Luke, I am your father." My wife goes, "Oh no."
Yeah, all right. I can see
So
why that was
yeah,
an easy choice to make.
yeah, so that's the sort of person I am. I'm on the long haul joke.
Yeah, that sounds awesome though. Okay, hi to Lawrence Davies, BGD, and Earthman Brick, Net1 Videos, Questboard Terrain. Hi, great to see you all. So, apart from making these fantastic long cons, not long jokes, not long cons, but anyway, how do you get into the hobby? Because you've been working on RPGs and RPG material for quite a few years now.
I got into RPGs when I was about 12, I think. A friend of mine had found some rules. I don't know which rule system it was. I never saw the book, but he said, "Oh, we're going to play this game." And then um, he didn't know what he was doing, so it was a kind of a weird experience. But one of my other friends and I sort of sat down and said, "No, no, we can make a better rule system than this." So we started actually writing RPG rules before we even started playing D&D. So and then I found D&D when I was probably, when I say found, I knew it existed. Um, but I had actually read the second edition rules when I was about 16, I think, 16. Um, and we played one game of that and we just started modifying the rules again. And I actually recently found that box set that I purchased on eBay And so I purchased it again, just so I could, like have a look at what what I was doing. Um, and yeah, so and then it was just we started designing rules for just about anything we wanted to do. We'd go and see a movie and like, wow, that was cool. So we'd go home and we'd create rules and start role playing in that environment. So I've always been a rule tinkering person, and I've never played with the vanilla rules. So it's very strange for me to play in other people's games of D&D because I always feel it's wrong. Like this is not right.
But you're following
Hang
the
on,
rule
you're
book.
supposed to be this. What's I didn't know you could do this. So yeah, so and I've always come from that slant of from for the rules, but and then I'm a tactile person, so I like making things and building things and taking things apart and putting them back together again. And my father encouraged me with model trains because my grandfather had a huge collection of model trains,
All right.
and he died in 1965, well before I was born. And I, through the inheritance chain, ended up with a small portion of his huge train collection, HO scale. And so all through my childhood, I had train sets and Lego, and I was always building things for the train sets and making them go under my bed, and had to have mountains and all kinds of stuff. So when D&D came along, I'd already designed the skill sets behind like I can make a dungeon. So all my adventures were around these sort of terrain bits and pieces.
Okay.
Um, and then we discovered Warhammer 40K, but we didn't have a rule book. We basically reverse engineered it from White Dwarf battle reports. So, of course, we got it very, very wrong because I grew up in Africa. So it's not like you had a Warhammer store on the corner or there was a game shop around, like in the city.
No, no,
It just didn't exist.
I totally get you. I mean, because my cousin and I, when we were about 13 or 14, had done exactly the same thing because we would get White Dwarf regularly here, but you couldn't really get Warhammer or Warhammer 40k in a box from a store.
If you could, it was extremely expensive. So it'd be 4 or 5 times what it costs. And you know that Games Workshop's not exactly the cheapest.
They
So
were a lot cheaper back then, but yeah, still for a 13-year-old's budget, that was a fair amount anyway.
and when I got into it, it was the 90s. So the rand to dollar and pound exchange rate was in large multiples.
Right?
So when you see, say, £20, you go, how much is that times 11? you know, that's what you're
Uh,
paying. You're like, oh, that's a little bit more than my pocket money for the next 6 months.
I know,
Do I
right?
really want that undead knight? Yeah, so that you kind of got forced into tinkering and forced into doing your own thing. And yeah, so um I then moved to Australia after I did all my degrees and everything. And I was working in retail, and I had a friend of mine I worked with who has and still has a channel where he reviews cameras, and I helped him a lot with just the things he can try. And I didn't help him with filming or editing but sort of because I came from a background where I had done editing and I had done story structure and all that, I helped him sort of, this is what you can try and these are sort of things you can do in your channel. And they were working for him, and he then challenged me, says, I bet you can't make a YouTube channel get 500 subscribers. So well, I'm pretty sure I could. And So about a week later, I was very sick with the flu, and I was lying in bed, and I was just trawling through YouTube, and I thought, oh, I just typed in dungeon tiles, and I was expecting to just see like reviews of D&D, like the sort of Hasbro, WotC dungeon tile sets or whatever. And then there was this video of this guy had made this like elaborate sort of cave and thing, and I was like, wow, this is pretty cool with the short walls, because I'd done short walls before, but I'd done them as like popsicle sticks with little rocks on them. I'd glue the rocks on and paint them gray
Okay.
and have various lengths, so you could have a map, and you could just create the rooms by moving the sticks around, kind of like how Professor Dungeon Master had does UDT, Universal Dungeon
Hmm.
Terrain, where you kind of spotlight, because I just didn't want to make thousands of popsicle sticks with rocks on it. I only made like about 40 or 50 of them, but then I could move them around to make the rooms. And then I discovered this video, and this guy talked about DM Scotty. I'm like, who's this DM Scotty guys? So of course I Googled DM Scotty, nothing, because Scotty didn't understand SEO and titling and whatever at that point. So then it's like, okay, all right. So then I had to like kind of trawl through, and I found Scotty's first video for 2.5D. Um, it was like how to make dungeon tiles or something like that. Or I don't think it was even titled that way. But since it has been retitled so that it's easier to find. Um, but I found that, and then I consumed at that point, I think Scotty had like 70 videos or something like that. And
Oh, so really
I
early days
cons
we're saying
it was very early, because people go 70, shit, that's a lot of videos. Um, but for Scotty, that's not a lot of videos. Dude's at like 800, 900 videos at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, it's 10
So
years 10 years worth of content, so there's bound to be a
that's
few.
right. So I was sick, and I was just consuming. I'm like, wow, this is a really good concept. Um, but I think I can make it better. And a week later, my channel started. And I sent you that photo of the sort of the first time we played on it.
Yeah, let
And
me see if I can bring it up. One sec.
yeah, and so that was really the test of like, how does it look? Is it cool? Blah blah blah. And yeah, within, I think it was after this photo was taken, you can see the classic DVD shelves in the background, which is from my
Yes, yes.
early videos. So these are the guys I lived with, and you can't see either of the cats in this picture, but they would have been there as well. So these guys came with me to Vegas for my wedding as well, so they're good friends of mine. And you can see the layout there. That is actually the very early version of Under the Tavern. They were the guys who ran through it first, and then I toned it down for normal people. Um,
Toned it down in what
because
sense?
it was like super gonzo originally.
Okay.
Yeah, I like to drive them crazy, and yeah, yeah, but yeah, it was just sort of using the tiles and see how they go, and yeah, we had a lot of fun, and it sort of was proof of concept for me, and then I started my channel. Um, and yeah, and the 500 subscribers the guy thought I couldn't get, that took 2 weeks.
No way.
Or no, I think it was 3 weeks. Yeah, I
Still,
think it was
it is
3 weeks.
like 2 weeks a month. It's like
Well,
that,
I
that's really fast.
posted because I did the intro first, and I posted the intro on the old DM's Crafts forums on Pro Boards. I just posted. I'm starting a YouTube channel, because at the time there was basically Scotty and maybe one or two other people that did it as a side thing. It wasn't the whole channel was dedicated to it. And yeah, so I just posted the intro video, and that got me about 120 subscribers before I
All right.
launched my first video. No, sorry, I'm lying. It was 50 subscribers, because I then had my 100 subscriber competition, which I think was happened in the first week. It was like someone won it in the first week, and they won the blood fountain from the intro. And Brad Smith, he won that. And I was years later, I was on one of his live streams on Twitch, because he does a lot of painting. He's a very good miniature painter, and he was doing this live stream giveaway of this dragon he was painting, and you had to put in a comment or whatever, and it randomly selected the comment, randomly selected me. So I won the thing that he was doing. I think it was one of the early giveaways on his channel, and he won the early one of mine. So it's weird how the universe kind of like,
Yeah, but
spins around.
all things balance out. So,
Yeah.
how did you go from binging Scotty's content to working with him on Quest Givers, for example?
Well, he and I in the beginning, like everyone was upset because I was copying Scotty, right? Um, and so there were a lot of people who were very upset with me. And of course, I wasn't aware of this until Scotty sent me an email, and we became firm friends after that. It's like, I was like, well, I'm not I don't mean disrespect. I'm like taking your idea and I've just sort of modularizing it. And I think it's the coolest thing since sliced bread. And I really appreciate the fact that you've actually put it out there and blah, 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 blah. And so we became firm friends. And then later when YouTube started doing live streaming, that's when like I think it was in the first month that live streaming was available. That's when we did our first Crafters Tavern. That was the first time I'd actually spoken to Scotty on a call. Was in that live chat. And Yeah, and then that became like a monthly thing, was to do Crafters Tavern. And Black Magic Craft Jeremy, he started his channel and then immediately came on to, like, that week he came on to Crafters Tavern and
So,
got discovered. Not
Jeremy,
like that. I mean, it's like he would have been discovered without us, but
Jeremy's
he felt it was,
a real superstar when it comes to crafting.
yeah, yeah. So he we had a great time, and sort of that's how we got to know him. And then Wylock started, and of course he came on because we found his channel and said, "Hey, do you want to come on to the Crafters Tavern?" And then and so did Balloona. We basically, more and more channels are starting all the time. Now it's practically impossible because there's just so many. It's like I don't think everyone knows all the different. I mean, used to be you could count on your two hands the sort of the channels in the in the community, but now there's hundreds of them.
Oh yeah,
So
and more growing every day.
I mean, I discovered channels that are like hundreds of thousands of subscribers that I didn't even know existed. So yeah. um,
Okay, well, we'll hear a quick shout out to one of our viewers and my friend Lawrence Davies, who just started his channel last week.
oh,
Dirty Basement Terrain.
congratulations. Sorry, what was the title of his channel?
Dirty Basement Terrain.
Dirty Basement Terrain. Okay, I'll have
Yep.
to look that up.
Yeah, I think we'll get to look at some of his work later in the community showcase.
I interact with a lot of crafting YouTubers because a lot of people message me and ask me like advice and things like that. Um, Now obviously I'm not hundreds of thousands of subscribers or millions of subscribers or whatever, but I have seen some stuff.
Yeah, I mean,
um, yeah, there's a lot of people that in the early days have contacted me and I've helped them out and whatever. And I'm not going to say that I'm responsible for their meteoric rise or anything like that, but I do feel that it's important that you do actually have a community of not just the crafters but of the people who make the videos about crafting, because it's a very it's a very sort of almost like lonely existence. I mean, you're interacting with people as text and whatever on the screen, but when
it's
you
a
actually
very
get to
one-way
talk to
thing
someone,
kind of thing. Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah.
And it's very difficult to see, like I've made hundreds of videos, but it's until I went to Mace in 2019, which is now, it's no longer called Mace, it's MythicCon, I
Mythicon,
think it's
yes.
called now. um until I went there, I hadn't met anybody who'd seen my videos other than like this, or talking to Scotty and so on and so forth. But when you actually meet people who you don't know but know everything about you, it's a very strange experience. Um, and so I think it's important as part of a creator's life that you actually interact with other people who do what you do. So not just the crafting aspect of it, but do the actual YouTubing and Twitching and TikToking and whatever it is that's current when you watch this video. I
Yeah.
think that's vitally important to the growth of your channel, because as Mr. Beast has said, it's like his channel would not have grown to what it is if he didn't interact with other creators and sort of like incubate ideas, because you can do things on your own. It will take you a year or so to kind of figure it out, but you could have a 1 minute conversation with someone who's done it and shortcut that process. And I think that's what happens now with a lot of people, is they can see what we did wrong in the beginning
Hmm.
and they can avoid that mistake. And therefore they start 150 videos ahead on their first video. So that's important. And of course, when I've started new channels like Quest Givers and so on and so forth, it's like obviously we come with all that knowledge of what we did wrong before, and now we'll try and do it better. Because you're never going to do it 100%. You're never going to, like, it's the thing that every person on the planet is going to want to watch, because you can never please everybody, but you
Yeah,
can do the best to get to all the people who should know about this thing, whatever this thing is. Um, and that's sort of part of my passion, is how do I get this in front of the most people who will think this is cool? Um, that's sort of like my driving force, is like, and if I haven't got it in front of people, I kind of feel like I I failed. But the thing is that for me, that sort of failure is like, how do I do this better the next time? How do I improve upon this? How do I make this better? How do I improve the experience for the person who's watching it? And that's key to anything on YouTube. It doesn't matter what you're doing. Um, because these days, we talked about this before the stream, but with the democratization of
hmm,
media, it's like it doesn't matter what your passion is. It really doesn't matter. There's going to be 200,000 people in the world who have a similar thing that they enjoy: stamp collecting, or old antique furniture rehashing, or whatever. It doesn't matter. There's going to be 200,000 people in the world who enjoy that as well. So you can really tap into the community of people who enjoy doing what you do. And they if they can't do it at the moment, they enjoy it through your videos, because not everybody has the time to do the thing that they enjoy. But they
or
may
they
have,
might be in the wrong time zone or stuff like that. Yeah,
yeah. So, or they, but at least they can watch a video about their passion that they enjoy. And I think that's a critical component of what it is that we do. Um, like, not everyone can go out of there and buy all the things, the fancy tools and the whatever, but they want to watch the thing being made, because like people who like watching cars being built. I mean, it's they may
yeah,
not have
okay,
the
I got what
money
you
to
mean. Yeah,
buy an old car and put it back together, but they will watch a guy 3 hours of a guy tinkering with a car, because it's their passion. It's what they like. And so, yeah.
yeah, I totally get you, and I also understand what you mean about it being about YouTube being a very one-way process until you get to meet people.
Yeah.
That's, for example, why I'm finding especially Discord hangouts are becoming more a part of my weekly routine, basically. Because
Yeah.
it's nice to bounce ideas around with people.
Yeah. Look, the it's like being a DM.
Hmm.
If your idea survives the players, then it's a good idea. So if your idea survives the sort of gauntlet of Discord, then it's a good idea. But then you have a time. The moment you put that idea out there, you've got a time limit, because if you don't do it, someone else is going to go, "Hey, that's a great idea. I'm going to do that." Um, that's the nature of the internet.
Yeah, fair enough. And let's see about you mentioned earlier that people are getting upset because they said you stole Scotty's ideas. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a discussion that we were having a few days ago as well. And it's like there's you don't really steal ideas. I mean, once you threw something out there, it's out there for people to use rather than nope, this is mine, keeping it for myself. But of course,
Yeah. Look,
you're not claiming it's yours. You're just doing something similar and improve building on it.
well, yeah. I mean, it's not like I didn't mention Scotty or anything. Like,
Yeah,
like
exactly.
I literally mentioned him in the videos. And then all my videos now have a link to Scotty at the bottom. So it was like, I said, look, mate, what I'll do is, like, to show that I really like what you do, I'll just put a link on the bottom of every single video to your channel. So and that was the end of the problem. And I mean, he and I have, are firm friends. I've gone and stayed at his house. I know his wife. I mean, it's we've done weird and wonderful things together, not in weird ways, but just weird ways. So yeah, so he's a really, really fun person, and I wish I actually lived next door to him. It's like it's one of my things that I regret is that I don't live next door to Scotty, because I've already moved countries once. If I was going to move countries again, I'd go and live next door to Scotty in Ohio. My wife won't like that, but it's either that or Norway because it's cold.
All right. So I've put up this picture. I think this is from May 2019. Uh,
That's right. Yeah.
so we've got the
So
whole gang of the
yeah,
tabletop reverse guild
plus
masters. Yeah.
yeah. So on that day, we inducted Jim on the second on the left. He was inducted as a guild master. The gentleman to the left is Miguel, who is the guy who 3D modeled the entire dungeon, the entire monster manual.
Whoa. All right.
Um, so he's a fantastic guy. We hung out with him and his girlfriend at the time, now wife. And then there's 3D printed tabletop Danny who's kneeling down.
Yeah.
And then there were lots of other people who were there, which I wish we'd got a photo with all of them, like Frankie D. Crafter and Craftnix and all these sort of people. Craftnix has just started up his channel again. He's doing some fabulous stuff with urban terrain. So if you're wanting to have a look at some great urban terrain, have a look at Craftnix. It's
Graphics. Yeah.
great idea. Yeah, so sorry, my accent craft, so it might be craft. Yeah, look, I really enjoy creative people. Um, I've always had friends who are like you musicians or painters or everything like that, but I'm also a technical person, so I love computers and I love programming and I love sort of the the mechanics of things. So when I studied art in high school, or if I go to an art exhibition or whatever, I'm super interested in like how was the paint applied. Like how did they mix the paint? Did they use egg in this, or did they just use ochre? Or like what sort of oil did they use as a base?
So the
you know
practical process kind of thing. How?
like I'm a practical process kind of guy. So, this sort of teaching people to do thing tutorials is, I mean, I teach people how to use computers. Um, People pay me a lot of money to teach them how to use computers. Well, I don't actually teach people how to use computers. I teach people why they should do things a certain way with computers. Because my sort of philosophy is teaching someone how to do something they don't understand why you do it that way means that they can't really branch out into other things. I think it's very important that you understand why it is the certain way. When I was studying for my degree, they wanted me to learn how to edit um, VHS to VHS. Now this was 1990, 1999, 2000. And I had already built an editing machine at home, which had a massive 20 gigabyte hard drive, so I could fit one
Whoa.
DV tape plus another half. Um, so I was like, why would I need to learn VHS editing when I already understand like in points and out points and all these sort of things? It's like that's not the mechanical thing that you need to understand. It's like you need to understand why you have in points and why you lay the things in a certain order. These are the important things you need to know, not that you push this button and then push this button and then push this button, because in 5 years' time, the technology will be completely different. And if you don't understand why you're doing it that way, you'll be lost. Um,
Yeah,
so,
I agree with that principle. I mean, both when coaching people to do software development, the why is far more important than the how. Same thing with martial arts.
mhm.
One place I see it in crafting, for example, is the classic Mod Podge and black paint.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
why are you doing it on a paper model? Because everyone does Mod and black paint. But do you know why they
yeah,
do that?
yeah,
Nope.
yeah. It's just that's because what everybody does, you
Exactly,
know.
yeah.
It's like why do you use acrylic paint on miniatures? Why don't you use oil paints, or why don't you use water-based watercolors? There have been people who have done watercolor painting on miniatures. It's very difficult and it's very time consuming,
Yeah, I
but the
was going to say,
results
yeah.
look really good. Um, Oil-based painting on miniatures is very difficult because oil doesn't dry very quickly. Um, but the results can be amazing.
Yeah, I mean, just look at James Whipple and others, yeah.
Exactly. So, yeah, I love a good experimentation. I love, just coming up with weird, crazy things. And that's how I developed that whole um, online theater sort of terrain.
Yeah, that was a really good idea.
Yeah, and it was basically because you're always looking at the terrain from the top down. I'm thinking, but the most interesting thing is if you look at it from the side, you know, and that sort of I got that idea by watching one of Ruinhammer's drunken live streams where he had the Darkest Dungeon diorama set that he'd purchased, and he was just like playing around with the miniatures in front of it. Of course, he was, in a usual drunken broadcast that has now since been deleted. Um, it was wild and funny, but I was sitting there going, wow, this is a genius thing. He's just moving these miniatures around in front of this thing. But if he was to take the camera and stick it in front of the miniatures, man, then you're playing a whole different ball game here.
It would look
Um,
that much more interesting, yeah.
that's right. And there were a couple of, or there are a couple of channels who were doing like live streams where they had Dwarven Forge set up and they would just move the camera through the Dwarven Forge. Um, and it's like, yeah, that's very time consuming. So like how do you get that look and feel and the sort of sense of depth and everything, but you kind of containing it in a useful space. And of course, you had Professor Dungeon Master's UDT, which is a similar kind of spotlighting concept, but I'm like spotlighting from the side rather than from the top. And you can still play in person with it in front of you because it acts as a DM screen. So it's not like it's an unnatural
Yeah, yeah.
thing.
It just happens to work
So
particularly well for camera. Yeah.
correct. So you just stick a camera in front of it, and now you're playing online and in person at the same time. Everyone's looking at the same terrain and having fun. So that was the idea behind it. The videos, to my sort of way of thinking, were not super successful. They were financially successful because people actually bought the plans on and made the things, and I saw pictures of people that made the things. But it's like, to put the time and effort into continuing with that process, you it's got to have long-term appeal. Whereas something like Under the Tavern, which I think someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was the first time there was ever a dungeon walkthrough on YouTube. um, in sort of a DM, Dungeons and Dragons um, adventure walkthrough, done in that style. And that was very successful. And I wanted to do another one. And when we started the Tabletop Crafters Guild, the Tabletop Crafters Guild was originally about all the channels collaborating on more projects. And it became untenable because everyone has their own lives and every channel was at different stages, because when we started everyone was kind of at the similar sort of space.
Hmm.
um but then some took off, others didn't. I mean, I lagged behind in terms of channel growth. Wylock took off, obviously Jeremy took off even more. um but I still wanted to do that collaborative thing. And the one thing I really wanted to do was to do a collaborative module, because I knew there was a space for it. I knew that it was something where, there's a lot of people who in the D&D community who can give great advice, but who aren't actually very good at crafting
Yeah.
adventures, or who actually, when the tires hit the road, it kind of like you can see that, okay, you're good at that sort of management of D&D, but you're not kind of very good at the creative side of D&D. And I'm not going to say who, because people will get upset. But you know who they are when you have a read through their materials and you're like, whoa, I thought this guy was good. Um, but and that's not to say that I'm good. I don't like, there's so much stuff that I personally feel that I need to improve upon. But like, to me, there's you need some kind of thing where people go, wow. I mean, just look at when Easy D6 dropped, and people were just like, it wasn't the fact that it was Scotty that it was selling. It's the fact that it's a very good
Oh
game
yeah, for
is
sure.
why it was selling. Um, the fact that it was Scotty who was selling it may, like, helped it along, but it wasn't, you know, people follow a creator and the creator has a t-shirt or whatever. I'll buy the t-shirt because, you know, I like the guy, so I'll buy his t-shirt. I may never wear the t-shirt, but I'll buy his t-shirt. It gives him some money, or she, um, or they. And so, but then when you buy something, you're like, this thing's amazing.
Yeah, the thing is that
Like,
if it didn't have its own legs to stand on, even if Scotty was promoting it, it wouldn't have worked.
it would have found its way. It would have done its thing. It's like more people discovered Runehammer after ICRPG than they knew before ICRPG. So it wasn't Runehammer that made ICRPG, it was ICRPG that made Runehammer.
Okay.
um and I think Easy D6, like, Scotty made Easy D6, but Easy D6 will make Scotty. Like, it's the lasting legacy that comes from the culmination of everything that people have experienced with Scotty, everything that everyone knows about Scotty. Like, it's all been distilled down into like an easy to use system. I'm very, as his friend, I'm proud. you know because he's like a brother to me. He really is. But yeah, so he and I were talking about, like, the Table Crafters Guild, and I said, oh, I really wanted to do an adventure. That's part of why I got involved with the Tabletop Crafters Guild. And he said, yeah, I'd like to do an adventure as well. So I said, well, why don't we do a collab, and we'll just see how it goes. We'll write a few adventures and we'll see what happens. So we sat down for an hour and we nutted out the North Road. So it literally took 1 hour for us to, because I have a whole structure on how the narrative and everything should run.
Is that
So we have the
part of your studies from?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
All right.
So it's based heavily on the hero's journey by Joseph Campbell. With tweaks. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those sort of, like, once you have the template and you understand how to use the template, you can generate things very, very quickly. So when you take two minds like ours and you smash them together, you get things like the Sarlachan, which the name suggests what it is. It's a Sarlacc, but with a difference. So all we think, well, if you took a beholder and instead of an eye, it had a giant mouth. But instead of flying around, it was actually stuck underground. Um, that was like, those are the sort of things. And we were like, oh, this is cool, this is cool. And we were just jotting down all these ideas and slotting them into where it would be in the story. And then we wrote the first one, which was basically Scotty and I spent like another hour and a half, just like, what should be in the first, like, this is when people arrive, what should be in the first episode? Like, if this was a TV series, how would you set this up? And again, using the narrative structure. That's why there are 12 main modules and 4 quick quests, which are like sort of side quests that you don't have to do, but still form part of the main story. That is one of the best experiences ever, because there wasn't any kind of poo-pooing of not like that is not a good idea, or that's not it would be he would say a thing and then I would say, but what about if you did this? And he'd go, oh, that's amazing, but if you twisted it this way.
That's the thing.
um
That's the thing I've often encountered in crafting circles, especially. It's like once you throw an idea out, it's people tend to. But what about this? And then you add this onto it, and then you add. It doesn't matter how do you say it? How elaborate the end idea is, but everyone tries to contribute to it constructively, which I find very refreshing.
yeah, I mean, we had like early on, we've got to have a drunk character who basically tells you everything that's going to happen. And we have that, but he's so pissed and he's so like incomprehensible that you like if once you've read the book and you go back and you read what he's saying, you go like, holy crap, he
In,
tells you everything that's
in
going to happen.
hindsight, yeah.
In hindsight, this guy's amazing. Um, and so that was there's all kinds of like cool sort of like when you look at it again, it's like, oh wow, I didn't realize that. um you might find a bit of paper and it says something, or you go into the library and you read a book or whatever, and it tells you exactly what you need to know.
But you
But
don't
just
know,
in a
but you
sort of
don't necessarily know you need it yet.
correct. So there's just so much of that, and I think our contribution, if we were to say such a thing, to the RPG community is the fact that we were NPC driven. So you walk into our world and you can talk to the people and they'll actually give you responses that are meaningful. And I think that's one of the things that's really lacking in adventures, is that it's very difficult as a dungeon master, and especially a new dungeon master, when you pick up someone else's material and you're kind of like rehashing it for your own, but you don't really know, you haven't really grasped the character, and you're struggling a bit with like how this character should be portrayed or whatever. But when you actually have all their responses and the way they should be speaking, and we even give you the foreign languages, so if they're speaking orc or whatever, the words on how you say it in orc are in there, so you can go and so like you're then more impressive as a DM because you can actually speak orc.
Yeah,
um
that always helps.
so that's what we felt would be really really cool, and I think that's if you were going to sort of buy the North Road for any reason, it's to kind of just experience a different way of looking at modules. That it's not just, okay, there's a town and then there's a blacksmith named Fred, and they can buy swords at 20 gold pieces from him, and like that's so boring. It's so boring when you read it. And I said to Scotty, when someone reads this, it must be like reading a choose your own adventure, where you're having the same experience your players will have while you're reading the book. And so like that was super important for us. It was super super important that reading the material was just as fun as playing the material. And I feel that we accomplished that. Of course, that's my opinion, doesn't count because I wrote the thing.
Yeah,
But
a
I
few
mean,
people in the chat did chime in saying that the North Road is amazing.
yeah, it's and I'm thankful for everyone who has purchased, and whoever's in the chat, if you helped us kickstart it. We made our goal with like an hour left, um, and the goal was sort of bang on the money. So we actually only had to put an extra $100 into the kitty to get the thing printed and shipped and
Nice.
everything like that. So and this was in the middle of COVID. I had a medical issue. There were obviously like things like delays, and so the usual Kickstarter sort of stuff. but yeah, it only cost us an extra $100 to get that book to everybody. And I haven't, other than some editing problems, because we didn't have a full-blown editor. But there are a few spelling errors and one or two grammatical mistakes here and there. But that's par for the course. I admit it straight up front. Yes, there are spelling and grammatical errors, but if that's how you're going to nitpick it, then don't buy the book, please.
Yeah, if I buy a book, gaming book, I'm not buying it for the spelling. That's for sure.
No, it's not. You're not. And by the way, it's like half of the stuff in here is in languages that don't exist, so it doesn't it
Hey,
doesn't matter.
hey, the accent on the goblin pronunciation is wrong.
That's right. It should be an E after the A, not a G. But yeah, look, so this is sort of the inside, and you can see we have things like fake post-it notes.
All right.
And so we make it look like an old worn book that you found in your parents' basement that you played in the 80s, and you're like, oh man, I forgot about this book. And so the cover, when you buy it,
Oh,
it's
it's
been
pre-worn.
it's pre-worn. um and it's got that sort of old faded look to it, and it's heavily based on like second edition, like the Thieves Handbook and things like that.
Okay.
So it has that very sort of 80s look about it. And then of course there's my line art and things, and then Scotty's amazing terrain. I didn't do any terrain for this. I did art. And Scotty did art as well, because Scotty is also an amazing artist. But I felt like if
Ah,
this was going to be a
does
labor
Scotty
of,
draw as well?
Scotty does draw as
All
well.
right, I didn't
Yes,
know that. All right.
he's very good. He's very, very good. So there's a lot of like this. This is Scotty art.
No
Um,
way. All right.
yeah, yeah. So there's a lot of you can see the difference between his art and my art. I mean, it's very distinctive styles, but it still has that 1980s, 1990s kind of feel about it.
Yeah,
Um,
I think we were talking about
and
your drawings before the stream, and it does have that. A lot of your artwork does have that very strong Russ Nicholson style.
Yeah, well, the style is actually developed from Rembrandt. It's
All right.
reminiscent of his etchings. I'm a huge fan of Rembrandt's etchings, and the sort of chiaroscuro effect that he was able to create. Um, and it's like almost like photographic depth,
Mm-hmm.
which is really hard to do. Sometimes I get it, sometimes I don't get it. Um, but I enjoy the process of trying to get that kind of feel of depth in the picture, which is difficult to do on a two-dimensional plane with just
Yeah,
black and
for
white.
sure.
So no grays, no change in colors. And everything is in deep focus, which is my favorite type of filmic focus, which is popularized after Citizen Kane, where everything is in focus all the way to the depth of the image. Um,
Okay,
which
got it. If I could interrupt you because we have a couple of
Sure,
questions for you.
sure,
Okay, so we'll get back to the drawings in a second because that's something I really wanted to
yeah,
talk about.
sure.
So first one, Dungeon Matron is asking if you will be at Mythicon next year.
I hope to be. Um, Obviously, it's expensive because I've got to go halfway across the world. Um, but and My wife is currently on maternity leave. She's taking another year off. So if there is some money in the kitty, I'd like to bring her and my son over to, actually we'll do a driving tour of America, because I've done it twice. I've done 8,000 miles of driving in the
Nice.
US. I've seen more of the US than most people who live in America. um, so we did that as our honeymoon as well. So we really enjoyed it. I always feel that if you can spend 2 or 3 weeks in a car with someone and you're still talking to each other at the end, that's a person you should be with. As a friend or as a significant other. And Yeah, so we would love to do that. It just comes down to whether we can financially, if we can do it, because we're on one income at the moment. But yes, my goal is to try to be there in November.
Okay, another question from Robert Evans. What are the other channels that the DMG runs?
The ones where I'm actually on the channel is the dmg.info, 7D System, Drawing Worlds, and Quest Givers. So Quest Givers is a collaborative channel with DM Scotty of the DM's Craft. 7D System is my role-playing game, which I hope to do a lot more with next year. Because my wife is off work, she'll be able to help me with a lot of things. The book is already edited. It just needs to go through layout. And I'm going to approach it in a very sort of different um, in a different way to how people normally do these sort of things. So I'm sort of tinkering with, as I do, I'm a tinkerer. I'm tinkering with how it will be deployed into the world, and how it will sort of continue on, be adapted and changed, and how people will be able to add their own things and so on and so forth. Because I think that's having a game is one thing, but having a community that plays the game is more important than the game itself. Because if you don't have that community of people who are playing the game, then it's just a book that no
Exactly.
one read.
If it's not being
And
played,
to me, that's like
it has no
the
point kind of thing.
ultimate, yeah, the ultimate failure would be like no one actually plays the game, and that to me would be terrible.
That would
So,
be very sad, yeah.
I mean, there are people who are playing 70 system at the moment. The rules currently are available through the Patreon that I set up, but um, if you send me a message on Facebook or whatever, I'll probably just send them to you because um, I I can't stand Patreon anymore, and I will be closing it. Um, but yeah, so the rules will be most likely next year. That will all come out. Then there's quest givers. So our next big sort of set of modules is called Hidden Valley, um, which is
I think you sent me a picture for
I
that.
sent you the cover art.
Okay,
Yeah,
let me get that up.
so that's going to be a sort of a very different look and feel to the North Road, but still be all the things you loved about the North Road. So this is the cover for it, without all the titles and everything. Um, and we want a more sort of storybook feel to it. So this is going to be sort of um, a different approach to the previous book, um, but still with Scotty's terrain and Scotty's art and my art and all that sort of thing. And maybe some other people will contribute as well. Um, but essentially, the players get trapped in this strange, overgrown valley, and something has gone amiss. And they got to find out what's going on. And in our usual style, because every module in the North Road is a different role-playing game experience. So you've got like a murder mystery, you've got a chase scene. One module is an entire chase scene that's just rolling in a cart down the side of a mountain. You've got you've got a horror, like the other module is like a horror story. So every module is a completely different experience. Um, and so there are 12 modules planned for this. We've already nutted out the story. We've already got everything in place. We've already written down the story structure for the first module. I just have to write it. um, at the moment, we're doing a large collaborative module with another large YouTuber, um, that is very cool. It's a lot of fun, yeah, I'm busy writing that at the moment. That's about halfway done, so that should hopefully be done soon, and it'll probably come out next year sometime.
Nice.
But this will start rolling out next year. Scotty and I hope to get this going pretty soon, and we'll do the same sort of thing where we put out one a month, so you'll be able to buy um, each module as a set. I think we're going to do sets of 3, so there'll be 4 sets, and then we'll most likely kickstart the printed book as well.
Nice.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
that's one to look forward to then. I see that Jess Hunt is saying, I got the North Road, it's very good. I read it last year while I was doing leatherwork for the new Willow series.
Oh, great.
That sounds fascinating.
Well, thank you. I do like the look of the Willow series. It's fantastic. So you did a great job on the on all the clothing and everything in there. It's really, really cool.
It's definitely on my
Congrats on that.
watch list. I have not had time to look at it yet.
Yeah, I can't really remember the original movie so well, but I look, it's a great little show. It's got really good humor to it, and I think that's what I remember the most from the movie, is the humor. And so I think they've brought that across well. Um, I've only watched, I think there's only 2 episodes available at the moment, so I've only watched those two. But it's way better than that Rings of Power, which was just a total failure.
Yeah. I mean,
I mean,
you know, having my wisdom tooth removed was more entertaining than the Rings of Power.
oh, it's such a, I mean, you're working with such amazing source material, and you
And
like,
you're
how
like,
do you
yeet!
how do you stuff it up? It's just terrible.
Okay,
Anyway, there's a question here, BGD.
yeah.
What do you consider a game master's number one most important attribute? Creativity, fairness, empathy, system mastery, or something else? That's a very difficult question to answer, actually. I mean, all of those things are important. Um, but I think I would say if you were a starting dungeon master, a lot of newbies have this tendency to want to tell you everything that's happening, and you kind of have to pull it back. And I think you need to really learn to drip feed information to people. If you've ever watched any of my games that have run on 70 system, my channel, the dmg.info, there's a couple on Master the Game. I ran a few guest games on there. You'll see that I only give them a little piece of information to one person, and then it's the next person's turn, and I give them a little bit more information, and the next person gets a little bit more information, rather than just giving them all the information all up front, and then half of them have forgotten by the time it's their turn, which which means that they're more invested and more involved in what you're actually, because they have to kind of listen to what's happening in the other person's turn, because they will miss something. So when it comes to their turn, they're like, oh, what's happening? I don't really get a lot of that in my games because I drip feed information, and people tend to pay attention a lot more. So I think that's a fundamental trick. Is if you've got a long thing of text, break it up per character. It's like each character gets a sentence, um, and they notice it in different ways, or make the characters do things to find information. Don't just give them information. Um, like
In what
they're
sense?
attacking a skeleton. If they're attacking a skeleton, don't say it's a skeleton. Describe the clinking noise of the thing approaching you in the dark. So, like, oh, clinking noise, what is that? And
Okay,
next
yeah.
player, okay, I light a candle and you see some old bone-like structure ahead. Like, oh, what the hell? I mean, I'm just spitballing here, but you know what I mean. It's like you don't just flat out say skeleton, because then it's like, okay, we'll open the monster manual. Skeleton is this many hit points. I've got to use this kind of club, you know. Um, and this is why Scotty and I reinvented all the monsters for the books, like, because you've never heard of them, you've never seen them. We don't put any stats on there. So you, as the dungeon master, if they're level 10, you can do level 10 stats for them. If they're level 1, you can do level 1 stats for them. So we don't dictate what the power of these things are. We just give you the thematic things that you need to know. It's like it dribbles and it has acid, you know, and it makes loud noises. That's all you really need to know from a thematic standpoint. But whether the acid does 1d4 damage or 1d100 damage doesn't
Uh,
matter,
yeah, it's just
except,
details.
yeah, that sort of detail is irrelevant as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it's a very good point, though. I mean, even the first part you mentioned about keeping your players engaged by drip feeding them information, that I think that would solve a lot of fiddling around with mobiles when it's somebody else's turn.
Correct. I mean, that's the biggest issue we have in games now, is like people waiting for their turns pick up their phones. Yeah.
Okay,
And the
let's
more you
see.
can avoid that waiting, because then people feel like they're actually a part of other players' turns because they're thinking, oh, they're thinking, what is this? What is this? How can I get the information that I want to know out of what the guy is saying? Um,
Yeah, I mean,
like if they're talking to an NPC, the NPC they ask a question, they get the answer for them, and then it's the next player's turn. And I like to do cliffhangering, which means I'm about to give you the information, right? Because it's really important and I can tell that you're salivating for the information. Then I move on to the next player. So now you got to wait a full round to hear the results of what you've done. Um, and that really works well. Don't overdo it.
so
Don't do it every time.
okay, so what I get is that you're time slicing what the NPC is saying.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, so
And
literally interrupt them
things,
mid sentence or whatever and move on to the next.
yeah. So I'll give you an example. So on Master the Game, they were playing a UFO style game, a futuristic alien invasion sort of thing, and they had to go and rescue a double agent from this bunker. And so they'd managed to fumble their way into this bunker and get down to it. And there were like multiple different jail cells. And so they get into the jail cell, and the guy walks out, and they look at his name tag, and it says, and now we move on to the next player. And then that guy's like around the corner, so he's like, shit. So now they got to do that. And the guy's like, well, who's it? What's the name? What's the name? What's the name? That's that's the kind of thing that's what movies do. That's what
Yeah, I
novels
was thinking
do.
it's TV shows especially do it quite often.
Yeah, it's you're playing with the person's emotions, and that's when a person has an emotional experience. And I'm not just saying laughing. It can be crying, it can be irritation, it can be sadness, it can be like all these sort of things. Then you have a good game on your hand because people emotion is what solidifies memory. So you remember things that you're emotionally attached to. So the more emotional content you can have in your game, and that's the players having an emotional response, not that the characters are, having an emotional response, but the more the players can have an emotional response, the more the players will remember your game. They won't remember the whole thing, but they'll remember that, geez, that guy, when I couldn't remember what his name was, and we had to really fight to remember what his name was. Like, that's the thing that they remember. That's the fun of the game. And if you can do that and you can have a memorable game and people will remember the game years later, then you know that you've done something great. And so if that's what you want to consider, the number one most important attribute would be to connect the emotion to the memory so that you could get that emotional response out of the players so that they remember what actually happened. Because then they don't need to take notes. They don't need to like write down what happened last session. They'll remember what happened last session.
Yeah, I think it matches what you would need to do to tell a compelling story.
Yeah. It's, I mean, stories are human mind programming. I mean, you're a programmer, so, variables and arrays and if else and loops and all these sort of things. The human mind works in the same way. I mean, human beings created these languages. Um, and so, it's sort of, you can actually program people to have an emotional response. That's how advertising works. That's how sales works. That's how psychology works. Um, and I don't mean it in a bad way. I'm not like saying, oh, you're hypnotizing people into having a good time. But it is when you understand that a human beings together are like an orchestra, and each person is a different instrument. That you, as the conductor, um, you will you are getting the instruments to play, and the music that comes out is the memory of what happened and the emotional sort of attachment to that. So if you look at it from that, it was a very different way of looking at RPGs, but if you look at it that way, you kind of get like how like each instrument needs to have its spotlight. Each instrument needs to be part of the whole flow of the music. Um, that's what will help you kind of develop the skills to really run a good game. And it doesn't really matter what the source material is, because if you understand how to do that, then you can pretty much play any game in any environment and make it interesting for the players. And it's not about rules. It's never about rules. So to me, rules help when they help with an emotional impact. So when you get that tense moment and they have to achieve a thing, that's great when a rule does that for you. But if it's just getting in the way and wasting time, then it needs to get rid of it. And that brings us full circle back to EZD6, because EZD6 is built on that sort of emotional impact. And that's why those games are so impactful and they're so memorable, is because you got rid of all the garbage and the fluff and you really drilled it down to this is what the essence of the game actually is. And that's why it's so good. As I said in that video, that everyone thought I was being an idiot.
No, I totally agree with that, especially since especially dice rolling has been pared down to that very minimum. When you do roll the dice,
Yeah,
that there's a lot riding on that.
correct. Yeah, always think about what is riding on this dice roll. If it's not if it's not something critical that's going to have an emotional impact, then you probably shouldn't be rolling the dice. If it's not going to be revealing in some way or do anything, then there's no point in rolling the dice. Just skip over it.
Unless there's some kind of risk or
Yeah,
something like that. Yeah, yeah.
it's like a person. I was in a game once where the guy, I said, I'm just going to climb over the wall, and it wasn't like there was any significance to my character climbing over the wall, but he made me roll, and then I failed, and it's like, so I'll just try again. And he was like trying to find a rule reason why I couldn't climb the wall again. It's like, well, there's no threat. It's not like there's any time. I just want to climb over the wall. And that sort of situation, like that's when I get irritated as a player, because it's like, why the hell am I rolling a dice to climb over a wall when I can take an hour to climb the wall? Like it
No,
doesn't matter.
doesn't matter. There's not
That's
even any payoff to it at the end of it.
yeah, there's no, I mean, if the wall was a mimic, okay, different story. Like that's a different story, or if there's a giant monster running up towards me and I need to get over the wall in
Really
order to
fast, yeah.
survive, then that makes sense. But when I've got an hour to kill, rolling to climb over the wall doesn't make any sense, and therefore don't do it. Just the guy climbs over the wall automatically.
Yeah, makes sense. Again, it's okay. One of the things I like in Z6 is that it really crunches down the time it needs to take to do things. But with this point you just mentioned, it's good to it's easy to apply it to any system basically,
That's right. Yeah,
whatever
I
the
mean,
rulebook says.
yeah, whatever your favorite system is, just cut out the needless fluff.
Okay, so going to your paintings and drawings.
Sure.
Seen this one? There, Nightmare.
That's the cover for Harvest, which was the collaborative module that Scott and I did with Jeremy from Blackmagic Craft. That's on Quest Givers. So that is a spooky Halloween.
You don't say.
Yeah, it's very cool because it's a dark and stormy night and you're looking for a place to stay, and you see the sort of window, like lights in the windows up ahead of the small village, and you go in there, um and everything's just a little bit wrong, and then things start to get really funky. um you're basically in a village full of little kids, and there are no adults, and they're trying to explain to you sort of how their society works and why there are no adults. And of course, they're kids, so they don't have any understanding of the world as at large. And then there's like a little girl who thinks she's a princess, and she doesn't care what the other kids say, and but she's got a mean streak to her. And so she just like, when things happen, it's like she tells it like it is. And just fun stuff like that. And a lot of people think it's one of the creepiest things that they've ever played because you've got that sort of the innocence of children in there, and sort of the things that are attached to that. So once again, it's sort of that emotional sort of thing that we push, and of course the NPC driven content. So lots of little kids running around. Someone just put Village of the Damned in the comments, but yeah, it's a mixture of all those sort of Children of the Corn, Village of the Damned, you know, anything where there's a whole bunch of kids and no adults. Like that's all been poured in with a giant monster.
Yay! Okay, jumping on to a different one. I believe this was the cover for Professor Dungeon Master's Frankenstein module.
Yeah, Frankenstein. I did a little experiment with this one. Leonardo da Vinci's paintings. He would always paint one side with one eye closed, and then paint the other side with the other eye closed,
Alright?
to get a sense of depth. And you'll actually, like, if you look at it critically, you'll see like the guy's hand that's in the foreground there. It's basically impossible for the person's arm and hand to be in that position.
Okay.
And the shelving on the right hand side is lower than it should be. So all these sort of little artifacts in there are actually in there intentionally, to when you look at it, it has the depth to it.
Alright.
um so when you look at it with different eyes, you kind of get a different experience to it. So it works better obviously on a larger scale, but it still works a little bit in this. And I'm always fascinated by the moon, so there's lots of imagery of moons in all my pictures, and it's usually the thing that's lighting everything. Um, and yeah, well, I studied Frankenstein as in university, so I understand the story very well. And like, that the whole notion of the creature, and that the creature is the victim of the whole story. And there's a whole thing about sort of naturalism, and the industrialization and mechanization of the world that goes into this. Things like the gun are very important, and that's the kind of thing I just sort of mull over in my head, which, whether it comes across or not doesn't. Yeah,
Yeah, I
to
mean,
me that's.
if you tell me, okay, draw a picture of Frankenstein and his monster, whatever, I'll be like, okay, I'm going to draw a picture of Frankenstein and his monster. It's like I would not be putting that amount. I'm not trained to put that amount of thought into it.
Yeah, look, I mean, we're at the precipice of a major shift at the moment with AI art, and a lot of people are sort of running scared and wanting to do it. And to me, it's like, it can't create on its own. You have to type something in order for it to actually do anything. And even then, it can't come up with something new. It can only take two things and smash them together. So it can't have an original thought. And without a human being, I don't know if a computer will ever be able to do that. So although you can say, oh, I paint me a picture of a guy from the 18th 19th century, lying on the ground with a gun, being attacked by an undead monster with a hole in the roof and a moon, right? They're not going to achieve, the computer is not going to produce the image that I see in my head. um, as an artist, I would need to employ all my knowledge of art to write a huge paragraph of information, or pages and pages of information, which would probably take longer in iteration than it would to just paint the damn picture. So for people who just want to quickly sort of create a character portrait or whatever, that's great. As a tool, it's just like a paintbrush. But as a thing which I think a lot of people feel it's like somehow going to destroy humanity as we know it, I don't think it can. I don't think that artificial intelligence can actually create anything without human prompting. A
we're
human
we're very
artist,
we're very far from that. If we ever get to that point.
it can't just one day turn on itself and go, here's a Frankenstein painting. like wake up in the morning and are like, this is what I'm going to do today. Like it cannot do that. Um, and and a machine, because it's not biochemical, it doesn't have emotions, so it would never be able to grasp or understand emotions from a chemical reaction that you have in your body, whereas a human being, that's how we operate. So it you could program it to kind of have a synthetic programmatic version of emotions where you could trick it into believing that it was having, but then even then it's still not what the actual feeling is, so
Mhm.
it can never actually be reproduced the way that a human can. It can produce its own things, and as being a computer person, I love what it will probably be able to do, but we are separating humanity from the technology will never work. Um,
Yeah, for sure.
Technology will always need us, and we will always need the technology, whether we're its pets or whether it's our pets. Um, you know, it doesn't.
Yeah, it's
they'll
not
they'll never be the same.
it's not something that we need to worry about for the next 50 or 60 years at the very least.
I don't think it's something we need to worry about for the next 1,000 years, to be honest.
Yeah, possibly not, probably not, but just to be on the safe side.
Yeah,
Okay,
this is the cover for 70 system. Um,
I love the
so
expression of the wizard in the back. It's like that
yeah,
man has seen things.
the OF. Oh, what have we done? Yeah, and the sort of the guy in the front who's determined, it's that fighter who doesn't know any better. I'm gonna kill this thing. It doesn't matter how big it is or how many tentacles or fangs that it
The guy
has.
with the flat
So
top, yeah?
yeah, yeah. If you zoom out a bit, you'll actually see that the top and bottom frame of the image, you're
Uh,
actually looking at them from inside the mouth of the
oh,
of the
yeah.
creature.
I
So,
can't zoom out on this, but
oh,
yeah,
okay,
I
yeah.
think it should be in frame now, yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, you're actually looking at them through the mouth, from inside the mouth of the creature. I love doing things like that. I'm always a fan of, like, if I'm shooting a movie or something, I try to put the camera in the most difficult possible place, and that gets you the best possible image, you know. Um, so yeah, and then you can see like all the drool and everything coming off the teeth, and there's a lot going on in this picture.
Oh, yeah.
Um, and yeah, it does have some of the dimensionality that I was talking about, where you can sort of feel it going into the picture.
Yeah, I
Some
think
of it is lost at the size, but when you see it larger, the effect is more pronounced. um, and I
uh,
also like to get a sense of movement as well, so you kind of I find a lot of people do character art, and whatever, the character's kind of very stiff and just standing there, and not you don't feel like they're actually doing anything. Whereas, this, obviously the wizard is in the middle of an OF moment, and there's the guy who's on the ground who's holding the torch. You may not have seen him properly, but
on
he's
the
like
left hand side, yeah.
on the left hand side. He's covered in, and
That,
he looks like he's the knight, so he's done for. Then the half orc guy, he's the one who's taking charge, and then the other guy's freaking out and just chucking his axe at the creature, so now he's lost his weapon. Um,
yeah, but
and that
I see the exaggerated perspective on the axe as well. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So that's like, if I start to play with things like lens distortion. I mean, there's the imaginary lens. There's a one where there's a picture of a house, which plays with it the most. But it's kind of like when you start to look at perspective as a almost like a fisheye lens, and you have this sort of bending effect of a lens that's not actually there. Um, that's the sort of thing that I like to play around
all
with,
right.
because it's very difficult to do. It's not an easy thing to try and do. And this style, I like, sort of cartoony sort of style. I can actually draw photorealistically, but it takes so long, and it's so arduous that it's just actually quite pointless. And then the thing is, you finish it, and people look at it and they just think it's a photocopy of a photo. And so
And you're like,
all
ah!
the artist all the artistry and like months of work mean nothing. I almost failed art because one of the pictures I submitted was a small sort of A5 photorealistic drawing of a dog,
Okay.
and the external examiner thought I just submitted photocopies. And
Oh,
my art teacher had to drag them back and say, that's not a photocopy, that's an illustration. Um, and so I went from like 25% to 95%. Um, and yeah, so and that was the moment for me where it's like I'm going to abandon the sort of realistic thing because it yes, you can do it, but it's not something that really you you're not you're not going to actually you're not going to actually have that emotional impact that something else would have. And I think that's where photorealist artists failed. There are some really, really talented photorealistic artists, but they work because it looks like a photo. You just don't look at it. You don't see what's going on.
yeah, I get
You'd
you.
have to put a photorealistic T-Rex in there smashing a car in order for someone to go, wow, how did they make, that's the only way you would get them to actually then look at that picture. But now with computer generated movies and also it's so commonplace that people don't look at it anymore. Whereas if you draw a badly drawn T-Rex smashing a car, people are more likely to be entertained by it. So my style kind of changed after that experience to more of a sort of comic book realism or cartoony realism, um, and mixing in the chiaroscuro sort of effect of light and dark to get that kind of depth. And yeah, I could talk for about 3 hours on art, but
And I
we
would
don't want
very
that.
happily listen to that. But what I was going to say is that this kind of drawing has a lot of nostalgia value because it's like literally if you remember the published games of the 80s and 90s, it's like this would be most of the internal artwork. Yeah,
Yeah, and to me, part of it is the thing you remember about old games that you don't get in 5e is the struggle. You see the struggle in this image. You
yeah.
can see that they're struggling against the monster.
It's not the superhero beatdown.
That's right. They don't have capes and they're not like indestructible. And I think that's what's been lost in modern films and modern television is like everyone is this indestructible superhero and people are bored because it's like the probably one of the worst superheroes is Superman because he's literally invulnerable. You cannot kill the guy. So there's no threat to him whatsoever. Where Superman excels as a narrative device is that the threat is to everyone else and he can't be everywhere all at once. That's where the story of Superman excels. But they don't do that. When you see like an Avengers movie or whatever, none of them ever get injured. I mean, they're thrown through walls and nothing happens to them. You know, it's like what? Like at least have a punctured lung or something. I mean, Iron Man. I mean, how has that guy not died like 1,000 times over? Um, you know,
I mean, just a guy in a metal suit kind of thing. It must have been pretty rough on him. Okay.
Well, even in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man movies, there was at least like you saw him with like busted ribs and things like that. It still maintained some of that realism. Um, and the first sort of Marvel movie, which is Blade, there was a lot of that, like he gets some serious beatdowns in there. So yeah, I feel that's like sort of one of the things why it kind of harkens back to that feeling of old role-playing games is because there's you struggle in those. You struggle to survive. It's like it's a difficult thing to win one of those games.
Yeah, I mean, winning is basically living another day.
So this one has a hidden figure in it. Can you see the hidden figure?
A hidden figure?
Yeah.
I,
So there's obviously the woman in the middle, but there's actually a hidden figure. It's very prominent.
okay, okay, I spotted it. It's between the trees on the right, yeah? It's got a
That's right.
bow
Yeah.
and arrow. Yeah, that's very well hidden.
Yeah.
Ah,
So it's like right there in front of you. And then all the trees have faces, which is a little bit more obvious, but so they're all like the trees are watching you, and so you get the sense of like a person alone being watched. It kind of the back of your mind kind of has that tingling, and that's what I wanted to kind of get because this is for a module called Messenger in the Woods.
okay.
And the party is kind of lost in this wood, and they're trying to find this camp of fugitives, and yeah, so the trees all have like a network that they talk to one another and all this sort of thing. And so all that sort of, and then you meet this hermit, and the hermit is the person there with the bow and arrow. But I wanted to kind of have that sort of a cool looking picture just when you look at it, but then when you actually look deeper, you find all the little things that you don't see on the first pass. I
Yeah,
love that kind of stuff. I love things that give you more on the second, third, and fourth viewings.
yeah. The thing is
Like
that
that.
I had not seen that before you told me to look for it, but now how did I not see that? It's like,
That's right. And that's hard. That's really hard. It's it's how do you draw something right in front of a person so they can't see it?
yeah, and I see now that for example, his bow is blending in with the highlight of the trees and stuff like
That's
that.
right.
Nice. Oh, by the way, Cross from Campaign Terrain corrected us, saying that the first
Yeah.
Marvel movie was Howard the Duck.
Oh yeah. Okay. I haven't seen How the Duck, so that's how I'll bow out of this conversation. The first cool Marvel movie.
Yeah, I think you can have that one.
Yeah. So this was a friend of mine. He wrote some rules for dinosaur combat.
Ooh,
Um, so I said I'd do a cover illustration for him, and I think it was a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo or something like that. And yeah, this was the cover for it. It was eventually colorized.
okay.
Um, but the whole depth thing, if you look at the T-Rex's head, it kind of pops a little bit from the background. It has a sort of three-dimensional look to it. So that part was successful, and there's some of it got a little bit too busy. Yeah, but with it, I mean, when you look at your own art, you just see what's wrong with it rather than what's working. So I try to focus on what works well, and that part of it works very well.
Yeah, and I love the textures in this particular drawing.
Yeah, that's one thing. That's what takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time to create texture, and also because you're just using black and white, and you don't have color to fall back on, and you've got to try to make everything seem like its own thing, and that's partly where this failed because it's so busy. I believe in a thing called uh, oh, it's rim lighting, really, which when you look at an object, the edge of an object against another object, there's actually like a line. It's like the meniscus on water, right?
Like
Between,
the white line on the crest of the first dinosaur.
yes,
Okay.
yeah, but if you look on the left-hand side of the crest as you go up, you'll see there's a white line. Even where it's white, there's a white line. Um, so you get this sort of haloing effect.
All right. Yeah.
And I like to do that a lot because it kind of separates the objects. But in reality, when you're looking at an object, there's always this very sort of thin meniscus around the side of every object, that there's a kind of slight distortion at the edge. And that's what I try to capture. And I think that's what helps generate a sense of depth. It's because your mind sees these things, but puts it in the irrelevant basket because it's not necessary for you to know this when you're looking at things around you. But if you look at a mug in front of your face and you focus on the edge and you look at the edge, you'll if you think about it and you actually look and try to disassociate your brain from its interpretive function of what you're looking at, you begin to see this sort of thin distortion to the side of the object. And that's really like what I try to do. Whether I succeed or not is
No, you
a
definitely have
matter of conjecture.
you would definitely have something going over there. Scatter Terrain is saying, I love how dramatically you use contrast. Quest
Yeah,
board,
that's
so,
the chiaroscuro, which is hundreds of years old.
yeah,
One of the most famous artists is oh, what's the guy with this man eating flesh, eating his own children or something? It's a very
uh,
famous sort of painting, but it's like this super high contrast.
I
But
know it's
Rembrandt used,
I know it's a painting of Typhon, but I can't remember what the who the painter was. It-
yeah,
I know the painting
he
you're talking about.
yeah, but yeah, that's sort of the Dutch masters were used it a lot, um, and so they have a very volumetric and like dimensional look to their paintings, especially if you see them in front of you, not a digital reproduction or anything, but when you see them at full scale. Like if you see the Night's Watch, if you go to Amsterdam and you see the Night's Watch in the Rijksmuseum or Rijksmuseum,
Yeah, that's
it's
right,
a
massive.
massive painting. It is huge. And you can feel the depth of that image. And that's the sort of thing that I really, really love. I'd love to do an image of that size, but the space and the time just make it, impossible.
Yeah, pretty much. So let's see. And Palpatelier is saying, love these illustrations, strong old school vibes. Makes me think of how often I drooled over Gary Chalk's work back in the day. Yeah, Gary Chalk pretty much illustrated the 80s and 90s for me, so
Yeah.
so let's move on.
So this, I was going to do another
Sorry.
module after Under the Tavern,
Hmm.
and it was called, what was it called? The Cove. Um, and this the Cove actually became when I was writing the first module of someone put it there, Caravaggio, that's who it was who did that painting. The so the so the first module in the North Road is Winter Bay, and the sort of the Cove was my first thing where I was going to have all these NPCs that you interacted with and whatever. So only about 5% of the cove exists in Winter Bay, and 95% of it has just been filed in a cupboard somewhere. But yeah, it was the beginning of my one to use NPCs as the driving force of a module rather than location and items and monsters.
I like that NPC-driven concept because I think too many modules just work of the location.
Yep.
So
So
making them NPC based sounds like it should be more intuitive, but I don't know, why it's not done more often.
yeah, it's not something that, I mean, it's NPCs are fundamental to role playing, and yet no one
Yeah,
no one
it's
uses
weird. Yeah,
them. It's very strange. It's like making a movie without images and just using sound.
I'm pretty sure someone has tried that at some point, but yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I've seen some weird films in my study, so yeah. But
Okay,
this one,
this is
so I
definitely
was,
40k inspired. Yeah.
yeah, 1996 I would have drawn this. I was 16, I think. Um And so this was the very first time I used this technique.
Okay,
Um,
I can
so
see the
I was
white
still
lines and the
doing,
stuff. Yeah.
yeah, I was still doing the photorealistic stuff at the time, but this was sort of the more, this chiaroscuro comic realism style. This was the very first image that I did.
So it's a bit of an experiment kind of thing, or
Yeah, it was an
anything. All right.
experimental thing, and then I did quite a few others, which I think they're in this PDF.
Let's see. Another
So that
wizard
was a
line.
cover. That was a cover from the Knights of Old, which is one of the modules in the North Road.
Okay.
So it's Swords of Honor. again, you've got that sort of dimensionality of the cross of the sword there. You feel like it's in front of him when obviously they're on the same plane.
Obviously.
So yeah, so that's fun.
This one
This
looks
was this is from the first module. So sorry. I can't remember the name of the first module now. Jeez, to look it up. Death and taxes. That's right.
okay.
So the lady in the middle is the tax collector, and she's obviously horrible. Um, and she's got this little pet called a warp ferret. And that's what's in her hands. And now the whole image is drawn from Star Wars, obviously, where you've got the big fat guy, the lizard thing. What's his name?
Jabba the Hutt.
Jabba the Hutt, and Salacious Crumb is the little thing that bounces around. That's Salacious Crumb, or my sort of warp ferret version of him. It's funny how I remember Salacious Crumb's name, but not his boss.
Okay. Of
And so
this
this is the
castle thing.
cover of Dark City, and this is a skull. So it's obviously the front gates of the fortress, but I wanted to look menacing and like you're looking up at this sort of thing that's going to swallow and eat you. So I based it on a skull, and then sort of all the weapons at the bottom forming the teeth
Yeah,
and the all that sort of thing. So
nice. I like how you use the shadows here. It makes it look very menacing.
yeah, and very much like Darth Vader, obviously too.
Oh yeah. Okay. Again, lots of textures in here. This looks really interesting.
So this was an ongoing joke with Nerdarchy, where they kept going on and on about koala dials because I live in Australia. Um, we have a joke with tourists where we talk about drop bears. And so the koala dial is like a cross between a koala and a crocodile, and it's a legit drop bear. So it drops down on you from heights and then wrestles you to death on the ground. Um, and
Y-
obviously quite a
You don't have enough deadly stuff in Australia to make more of them up.
I know we, we need more deadly shit.
Yeah, what this place needs is more deadly animals. Okay, some kind of
Yeah,
cooperating.
this is yeah, on my channel 7D system, I actually do like lore videos on these. So I actually produce videos where you see me drawing these illustrations and I expound the lore that I make up for these monsters. And this is a puffer snake. Um, so it's able to puff its and project whatever acid or whatever comes. I can't remember.
Okay.
It's a while ago that I did it. Um, but yeah, just drawing weird and wonderful creatures.
Okay, this was the cover for Anders Never, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
Yep,
So
I
when
love
I
this one.
drew this, I hadn't drawn anything in 10 years. So and
It's a
my
hell
girlfriend
of
at
a
the time,
brick.
who's
Yeah.
now my wife, she didn't actually know that I could actually draw. So when she saw me drawing this, she freaked out. She's like, it's like a skill she didn't know I actually had. Um, and yeah, I had a lot of fun drawing this, and this is what sort of got me back into art, was this drawing. There's a lot of things, that I now look at it and there's a lot that I feel is wrong with it, but every artist will do that. Every artist will look at their work and go, "Oh God," but I still love it as a sort of a that sort of coming back to art after not doing it for a while.
I really like that there's so much going on and different things and spaces and even the empty spaces around it.
Yeah, it's very much like a Where's Waldo of D&D.
For example, I just noticed now that there's that skeleton stuck under the over the arch.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and it's all things that are in the module. So there's all stuff that's in the module is represented there.
Okay, so Earthman Brick is saying, love the technical style, reminds me of MC Escher. Yeah, it does.
Yeah,
It
Escher's
totally does.
amazing. Escher, one of the most impressive things about Escher, I mean, you got all the sort of things where you got like sort of the infinite water and all that sort of stuff, but there's one painting he did where it's a guy looking out of a window, looking at himself looking out of a window, but it's a 360-degree image. And there was a person who actually did a computer model where they scanned in the image and then sort of zoomed in infinitely, um, and it just keeps looping over and over, and it's amazing. It's
All right.
really for a guy to actually draw something like that. I mean, because he was a mathematician, so he understood all the sort of fundamental laws you need for perspective and all the things to have a 360-degree infinite image. Um, it's
Yeah.
it's that is an amazing piece of art. Um, and if you haven't seen that, I suggest there is actually a documentary on MC Escher, which I think is on Curiosity or Nebula or one of those sort of
All right.
things, possibly on Tubi as well. It's a documentary on MC Escher, and it goes, I think it goes into depth on that specific image because it's just an
Nice.
amazing piece of art.
Oh yeah, for sure. Probably look it up later then. That's kind of stuff that you just have to keep looking at.
Oh yeah, well, that's what I try to do is like it's just you keep looking and you keep seeing more and more and more information. So this is actually only half of it. This is actually because the image is sideways. It's
Okay.
the file that I sent you was when you print it out into a booklet. This is the second half of
Okay.
it,
Okay.
but it actually works as two different images. Um, but the more interesting part is the second half here with the weird castle and the giant moon and the reflective water and everything. Um, and yeah, again, you get that haloing. That haloing is used here as well. Um, didn't work so well on the left-hand side of the building, but works really well when you see the landform in front of the moon. You can
Uh-huh.
tell that that's separated. Um, and on the right-hand side, obviously, it's quite pronounced. Yeah.
Where was this? Was this a drawing for its own sake, or was this used in
Uh,
something?
s- Someone commissioned me. They were doing live stream things, and they said, "Oh, would you be able to do an image?" And I just drew this
Oh,
image. I
nice.
don't think they used it. I don't think they used it, but you know, sometimes I just want to draw stuff, so I
Oh,
do
fair
things.
enough.
But I think the parts of these images have been used in some of the products. I just use pieces of them.
Okay. All
So
right.
I think that the left hand side of this was used in North Road. I don't know if the right hand side was.
All right. I got you. Okay, and I think you mentioned
And
that
then
this
this
was
is
another commission, yeah?
Yeah, well, this was when we started the Tabletop Crafters Guild, and I started drawing worlds, the channel. Uh, Lee Eddings, who's been part of the group for a very long time, he was an admin at one point. He said, "Oh, can you do me a drawing of everybody?" And so this again is a horizontal picture, so you see a left and right side. So it's got Scotty, it's got Wylock, it's got myself, and it's got Jeremy, and then Lee is the main guy in the middle. And then they're being attacked by horned goblins or whatever they're not meant to be anything specific, like demons or goblins or whatever. Um, but also a very interesting sort of use of perspective and whatever. It obviously meant to be a horizontal image, so the depth you get more of the sense of depth when you see it that way.
Yeah, for sure. But you still get some, pick up some depth in this way. Again, you
Yeah,
go with
yeah,
force perspective and stuff.
yeah, yeah. And again, you get the haloing on the bow, so the bow separates from the background and all that sort of thing.
And I mean, even if these are stylized, cartoony drawings, I mean, you can still recognize the people. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
Bill is
yeah.
very recognizable, for example.
Yeah, No, it's a lot of fun. You know, I enjoy doing it as well. So you know,
Okay,
it's always it's cathartic to kind of like do something for yourself and for other people.
oh yeah,
Um, so the next one is my father-in-law is heavy into dragons. So
I think I
for one of his
remember
birthdays,
you did this in one of your videos, yeah, in drawing worlds,
yeah,
if I remember correctly. Yeah,
yeah. So so again, this is a
yeah, don't
horizontal
tell me.
picture.
Yeah.
This is the left side, and that's the right side. Again, messing with the light source of the flame coming out of its mouth. Um, and yeah, it's
Yeah, but I can tell you this would make a badass book cover.
yeah. It's someone wanted to use it as a board game cover. Um, they wanted to buy the rights to it, but it would need to be colorized. I don't know if black and white for a board game cover would work, but it's up to them if they wanted to purchase it.
Okay, more space
So
marines and
this
what's that?
was around the same time as in about 1996 when obviously I was into Warhammer 40k and obviously I just developed the style. So there's the Eversaw Assassin and the Space Marine and then the Scout on the bottom right. And the bottom left is just a character piece that I was doing on drawing worlds when I was just drawing some character sort of character portraits,
All right.
and that's quite a rough, quick one. Messing around with this sort of different facial features and
Still, I mean,
yeah,
it's practice. It's all practice.
yeah,
No, this is interesting.
yeah. So
Really, really weird.
um, this is the module basically the you it's the one after Temple in the Mountain and North Road where basically you cause this whole mountain to cave in on itself.
Oops.
Um, and getting the title for you now, Inner Sanctum, it's called. And so the module is you're going through this sort of dungeon that's a distorted reality that's collapsed in on itself. And so every time you play the module, it works differently. It's sort of the way things are placed and how things operate sort of all changes. Um, and so that I want to sort of capture that fractured reality um, in the cover.
Do you ever use these as part of a game, like for example, handouts, or just tell the players, okay, you are seeing this now?
Yeah, they're good. You can use them for that sort of. I tend not to use. I like to use terrain, but I don't like handouts because it just slows down the game.
Fair.
I mean, I'm not saying that you shouldn't use handouts or that it's wrong or whatever. I'm just saying that I don't use them.
I got you.
So this is the one I was talking about earlier where I was messing around with lens perspective. So the house is actually curved. Um, so there's points where like you're seeing on top of the roof in the middle and under the roof towards the top, which you shouldn't be able to
Of
see
course, I
if it
I get
was
your point now. Yeah.
yeah, standard perspective doesn't work that way. And also this module is about like a horror sort of house on the hill kind of horror module. So I wanted that sort of like distortion to feel like there's something wrong with this place. Um, I think that helps sort of sell that.
Yeah, it's definitely a trick that horror movies use a lot.
Yeah, it's like they call it trombone shot. So um I don't know if I can demonstrate with this camera, but basically if you zoom out and move towards the subject at the same time, the backgrounds
Okay.
kind of does that weird sort of thing. um so like trying to make a static image look like that is essentially what I was trying to do. um so that's why the sort of background house kind of looks a little bit off, um,
Okay.
the sort of grayed out house in the background. But that's really to sort of give it that sort of as though the background is bowing as you just like zoom in and pull out at the same time.
Right. I mean, it's a different way of creating an illusion of motion and feeling with the with literally
Yeah,
just black and white and paper.
yeah. And I'm
Nice.
not saying that I achieved this. I'm just saying that that's what I was trying to do.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't want to come across as like I'm a master at doing this stuff. It's just like that's what I'm trying to do in these images.
look, even coming up with an idea for doing that kind of thing, I think that takes some brain power, man.
Yeah, you can get a headache thinking about it. So
Okay,
this is the cover for the White Castle. And the whole through the whole North Road, there's this whole concept of the Dark One, which is this nondescript, impossible to identify bad thing.
okay.
It's like the nothing in the
Never
never-ending
ending story.
story.
Okay.
Yeah. So and this thing is going to consume the world. Um, and because you can't say what it is or think about what it is, it's not possible to really identify it. We don't have to, so we leave it up to the players to make up their mind as to how badass it actually is or whether it's a good thing. And I think that's also a key to it is we don't explain what's actually happening in the module. There's no summary of like this is what's happening, this is what's going on. We just tell you these events happen. And then it's up to you as the dungeon master and the players to kind of go, oh, I know what's going on. Um, but we, as the writers of this, although we had our idea of what was going on, we didn't want to put our idea into the story. We just wanted to put these events of things that are happening. So you kind of make up your mind as to whether you've done the right thing or the wrong thing. And so no matter how you end it, you feel like you did it the way that it should have been done. Um, and yeah, I think that's part of the reason why it works for people is that it is sort of open ended in terms of
All right.
what the actual meaning of everything is. Um, so obviously we thought about what could this be, and then we wrote things and just took out all the information that would make it. Oh, I can see what's happening here, and then sometimes you say, well, if someone thinks that it's this, we'll throw in this piece of information here, which would go, wait a minute, now I'm second guessing what I was thinking. So, like you can never really know what was going on. I think that's also helps for replayability as a dungeon master as well.
Oh yeah.
You can see how different people approach the same subject matter. And that's great for us when people have played it in live streams or when people tell me about their experiences playing the modules is they always tell me a different story. They always tell me something different happened. And that's what's so amazing. Is like, I don't think you could do a video on like this is how you play the North Road. I don't think it's possible because it's just like every person who approaches it will do it in a completely different way. So I mean the same things happen, but the reason why they're there and what they're getting out of it is completely different for every person.
Okay, I think taking that a step down, I think I used to do that a lot in the first group I was DMing way back in the 90s, I think. Yeah, the 90s.
Yeah.
Early 2000s. And so this thing happens, and this thing happens, and this thing happens, and players are like, aha, that must mean whatever. And I'm like, oh, yes, good, I had not considered. Yes, that's exactly what's going on.
Yeah, look, I mean, everyone always talks about player agency, and I think that's the wrong thing to actually focus on. The thing you need to focus on is player volition.
What's
Volition
that exactly?
is so agency means that a player must have a choice,
Okay.
and volition is that the choice must matter. So when someone says they did it on their own volition, it's like it was their own choice and that choice mattered to them. Um, so people have this thing where they hate railroading. I don't like railroading. Railroading's terrible. The only reason why railroading would be terrible is if your choices don't matter. So if you get the player to have a choice, they have a choice, and then they make that choice, and that choice matters, even if that was the only choice and it's actually a railroad, it still works as though it was a sandbox because the choice mattered. Um, And that's the important thing I think to focus on is you don't want to funnel people into it's always have to make the same choice, but you want people to generate their own choices, and that choice must matter. And then, of course, you in the way that you craft your world and the way that you craft your story, you're not giving them infinite choices. You're giving them two, maybe three choices, and that's about it. When you give them too many choices, then they get paralyzed and they don't do anything and they wander around and become murder hobos because they can't really decide what they want to do. Um, so that's I always, if you watch my videos and whenever we talk about player agency and everything, I always then focus on volition. And it's not something you see anyone ever talking about in the RPG community. The only time I've seen it talked about was in a games development conference, GDC.
Okay.
There's a talk about player agency and player volition. And that talks about that in computer games and how the choice to do a thing in a computer game is what drives the game forward. But the fact that that choice mattered to the player is what makes it a good game. And that's what I've sort of taken to heart is that like the choices must matter. If the choices the players are making doesn't matter, then your game basically will fall apart. And people will accuse you of railroading, even if you're not railroading, because their choices don't matter. These things just happen.
I got you. All right. Yeah, that makes sense. Hmm.
But yeah, you can if you use volition correctly, you can railroad, and the people will love you for it. Um, and therefore you don't need to like prepare just volumes of content.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I had definitely never heard this discussed before about volition. So yeah, thanks for
Yeah.
that.
So this was I did a thing on struggle in combat, and I wanted to sort of like draw two people fighting where who has the upper hand in this, is it the guy at the bottom or is it the guy at the top, and it's like you don't really know. And it's like maybe if you know something about fighting and sword fighting or whatever, you might say, oh well, he's using this technique and so therefore he won't be able to come. But you know from a lay person's perspective, to me it's like you can't really tell who actually has the upper hand because the axe is swinging downwards and the sword is swinging backwards. So you don't like
Yeah.
it doesn't like it's not immediately apparent as who's going to win in this situation.
No, it looks like a mess, which is what a fight looks like.
Yeah,
So
correct.
okay, and the other one, the book and the potion.
This I drew for Under the Tavern. I think I've used it many times, and it was a doodle on a plane. I think.
Yeah, nice,
Um,
nice for a doodle.
yeah. Sometimes I just doodle things, and then yeah, I did some equipment. Someone wanted me to do some pictures for an equipment page somewhere. I don't know if it ever got used, but yeah. So both of these are equipment.
Okay, I really like these small kind of. This is usually stuff that you find in the corners of pages or stuff like that. But I'm really fond of them.
Yeah, I always like being a fan of Star Wars. I always like junk. It's like you judge a society by its junk. You know, um, because like what are they discarded? What are they throwing away? What collects in the corners?
All right.
Um, because to me sometimes in art and movies and whatever, just far too clean. There's just
Yes, yes,
like
yes, 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 yes,
you
yes,
don't
yes.
feel like the space is actually lived in. And I love stuff where it looks like, this has actually been here 1,000 years. Someone actually thought about like the bones that were ground down to create the dust that collected in the corners. Like that was a creative choice by the person who made this thing. And that's to me, that makes the image so much better is like when there's like lots of little things like that, tiny details. I used to love Mad Magazine where you'd have the like Sergio Aragon's cartoons down the sides and in the corners or whatever. I used to love that sort of thing. It's like you're not just getting a comic book, you're also getting these other comics down the side.
Oh yeah, for sure. Okay.
So this is a temple in the mountain. So this basically this mountain is like Swiss cheese, and they've basically constructed this massive temple inside it, and you have to go into this temple. And so this is the warrior arriving on the road. If you scroll down, you can see the road. Um,
Is this the
and
temple that gets broken up in the other? Yeah,
yes,
okay.
yes. So this comes before. And yeah, it's that whole sort of the threat, the threat of the weather and the threat of the lightning and the sort of ominous sort of sense of like, what the hell is this place?
Nice. I like the effect up here. This looks like this should be on an album cover.
Yeah. I always try to do things that they look like covers because I always need a cover. It's like I need a cover for a thing. This next one was I have been messing around with creating card games.
Okay.
And I've got one that's in the very late stages of development at the moment. And this was from an early version that I actually used as spell cards for 70 system. So so I just did this illustration as a way to represent different spells and things. Because I like Magic the Gathering more so for some of the mechanics in it and the artwork than the actual game. I do collect Magic the Gathering cards, but only very specific ones.
Yeah, I get it.
Um, and
I mean, the
yeah,
artwork in Magic the Gathering was literally industry changing. It's like,
of course,
you've got
of course.
before Magic and after Magic.
That's right. And I mean, it's also how a lot of people have jobs. I mean, one has to remember that like you need a market for your skills if you want to make a living as an artist.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You know,
That's a good point.
you can't just go down to the local sort of fete and sell your works because not everybody wants a picture of a dragon in their living room. That's a very small subset of people. And I learned very early on, um, I we had this market day at school when I was in standard 3, which is year 5 in the American and Australian system. And we had to like produce products to sell at this market day, right? So they teaching you about sort of, making things and selling things, and how the real world works when you're a small kid. And it was the time of Ninja Turtles. Ninja Turtles were huge. And so what I did was I drew all the Ninja Turtles as individual things, and I made photocopies of all of them, and I sold the photocopies as coloring in things.
Okay.
And so a lot of people did things like they made cakes and they made like ashtrays and whatever, and they'd sell them, and they'd sell the cakes for like $2 or whatever. The currency was not strong, so that's why $2 for a cupcake seems expensive, but it's not. And I was selling each one of these photocopies for 20 cents. Now, the person who did the most in terms of turnover, I think was about $30. And then I came in at about 300. So you can imagine how many photocopies of Ninja Turtles I actually sold. Now, no one would have paid me $300 at the time to draw 4 Ninja Turtles, right? But I could make them as coloring in and sell them many times over, and have $300 to go and spend on lollies and sweets and cool drink and whatever, and arcade machines, go play Double Dragon and
Oh man.
Pac-Man.
Oh.
And when you're like, I think it would have been 11 or whatever, when you're that old and you got $300, you're like, oh, everyone's your friend. Um, so that was my first experience of actually like how the actual market of art actually works, where your art is more valuable in a product than it is on its own. So because on its own, it's a single thing which gains value when you're a well-known artist, but if no one knows who you are, it has very little to no value whatsoever
I
to
see.
society. But as a Ninja Turtle coloring in image, like all of a sudden you now, I mean, obviously, like they could sue me for copyright and all that sort of shit.
I think the
But
statute of limitations is expired on that by the
I
statute.
know I was 11, give me a break. But it was, for me, it was a learning experience as to like the real value in your art is when it's a product and you can sell that product to people. And that's always been whenever, you know, because everyone always say, oh, being an artist, you never make any money. It's like, well, yes, if all you're selling is your art, and you're not selling a product with your art in it or on it, then yes, it can be that the vast majority of artists will never make any money. But if you understand the marketability of your art as a thing to sell another thing, then you can see the true value of what it is that you're doing. So uh, the Magic the Gathering art on its own, if it's an unknown artist, it could be worth $100, but on a Magic card, it could be worth millions.
Yeah, I
You
get
know,
you.
that's the difference. And then, of course, because the Magic card becomes valuable, the original art becomes valuable as well. Like I wanted to, I had this idea about 10 years ago that I wanted to collect the original Garbage Pail Kids art, and it was like really, it's like 2 grand for one of the original paintings. And I was like, oh no, that's a bit pricey. Now they're like 40, $50,000.
Oof. And these are just the
So
drawings of or the original drawings of
the
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 garbage pail
original
character.
paintings
Whoa.
of like Atom Bomb and all those, the really sort of high value stickers from the day, um so that sort of really illustrates, if you're a young artist and you're like, think about how your art can be used in another way that makes it more valuable. And it's like, I could not have sold that picture of the Under the Tavern cover on its own. Like,
Oh
people
yeah,
wouldn't
okay.
pay 25 cents to download that picture, right? But I slap it on the front of a module and sell it for 99 cents and you make 10 grand. Like it's a totally different,
Yeah,
like
right.
it's a totally different ball game. That's, and it's the thing that's like, obviously the videos sell it as well. And so, like, if you think about the videos as art, they're all there to sell the art of the way that it's written and the art of the book and blah 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 blah. But it's, once you've coalesced it into an actual product that a person is willing to actually spend money on, that's when your art actually increases in value. And of course, if you become well known, if I had 10 million subscribers, then my art would be of a lot more value than it is on its own. um,
Yeah, that makes
but
sense.
as as the cover of a book, if you take the actual value of the sales of the book, then it's in the thousands of dollars. But if you take the value of just the drawing itself, then it's doesn't have much value at all, other than to like extremely weird collectors who collect DMG art.
There's probably a niche somewhere.
Yeah, there's a niche of weirdos who like me that much. I think my wife might be one of them. But
Okay.
the thing is, I love weirdos. So like, I'm not saying weirdos are bad. I think weirdos are like, I am a weirdo. Like, that's, you know, if anyone were to describe me as normal, I think I'd have a heart attack.
Okay, I remember the skeleton. This was also from one of your lore videos.
Yeah, it was one of my monster videos. And it was the monstercology was effectively that there was a puppeteer who got into some like hardcore magic and accidentally became a necromancer, and that's how like skeleton animated skeletons. So like it's actually comes from like a force of puppeteers.
All
Like,
right.
I can't remember the exact story, but that's how I was selling the idea of these animated skeletons. It actually came from a, a guild of puppeteers.
Okay, Scattertrain is saying, I'd imagine the whole chat is full of weirdos.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying it is, but it is, yes. But yeah, I love you guys that way.
Yeah, people who are willing to give up their time to come and watch two other guys talk about one guy's pictures for 2 hours, Like I love you people. I really do. You know, I'm one of those people. I'm one of those sort of people who's just gonna geek out. Like when Scotty's on a stream, I sit and I watch that stream. You know, he's a friend of mine. And if someone else who's a channel that I like and they're in a stream, I'll watch that stream. And so like, you know, I like this kind of thing because you know Karl does what I've done in terms of video production and doing the YouTuber thing and whatever. And of course we do terrain. But so we have these points of overlap. And yeah, I just love it when people show up. You know, it's like even if it's just one person, it's just an amazing feeling when someone shows up to actually just be a part of this thing that'll only happen once and then you can only watch it in a rerun for the rest of time.
But let's talk about
Oh
this really
yeah.
cute rat now.
Okay. To me, the best monster in any bestiary or in any RPG is a rat.
Okay.
They are the most useful monsters. Like they're super intelligent. You can use swarms. They can attack level 20 characters. Like they really are the best monsters in any game. And so like till the day I die, rats will always be my go-to for any kind of like you see a rat and people go, huh, it's a rat. Well, little do you know, that's not just any rat. um, and
This was
we're writing a module at the moment that is heavily based on rats. So
really
this
all right.
image will probably be, yeah.
Okay. Evolution of Gaming is saying I want to get some colored pencils and color the rat. Yeah, I know,
Yeah,
right?
that's one that, as I said, if you go back to the whole Ninja Turtle thing, it's like creating like adult coloring in books is like something I've thought of, you know, because it's people would love to just get some colored pencils out and do the like little bits of fur in different colors and so on and so forth. Um, and the problem I have with coloring in books and with paint by numbers is that you're just filling in a block rather than actually using some creativity to actually
Yeah.
add more to the image. So yeah, like if I was going to do something like that, it would be like, okay, you have to use 5 different things and use lines or circles to make this, to improve upon this image.
I know there's a channel, I forgot the name, but I think it was Artist versus Coloring Book.
Yeah.
And he gets these cheap Disney coloring books and remakes them into horror scenes. And the guy is really good, so just literally taking something from Frozen, for example, and turning it into nightmare fuel.
Yeah, well, Frozen is nightmare fuel. If you actually sit down and think about what the story is telling kids, you freak the fuck out. Whoa, what are we doing? You can't tell children this.
Yeah, I try not to look too deeply into Disney movies. It's
Yeah, some of
yeah.
them are like if you like there's a veneer of all this sort of happy sort of thing, but when you actually like think about it and you actually structurally think about what's happening in the story, you're thinking like, why is this guy making this puppet child? For what purpose? Like why? It
Okay.
doesn't make any sense. And that's what makes it ick. Like I've just
Yeah.
ruined Pinocchio for some people,
Or
but it just
going for the classics. It's like, why is this man making out with a dead body found in the woods?
that's right.
Yeah, like it's not exactly the healthiest.
No, no. What are we actually teaching children?
Not
But
to.
if you think about the tradition of children's stories, if you think about it, a lot of them are heavily ick.
Oh
Roald
yeah, yeah. No
Dahl is a
kidding.
perfect example. Roald Dahl was a master of understanding what makes kids enjoy content. Um, and it's like you got to describe the snot coming out of the witch's nose, like that. Like kids love, parents go, oh my god, you can't have that, but the kids go, this is like something they're not allowed to read or not allowed to watch or whatever, and that's what they love. And Roald Dahl was a master at that. He was so good. And I mean, he actually said in interviews that I've read and seen, like his thing was like, how can I make this the most disgusting thing you've ever read because a child would just drool over it.
Sorry. Evolution of Gaming. I think you mean Jordan Persegatti. Uh, Possibly the name rings a bell, but yeah, that might be the guy.
There's just so many names.
Oh
It
yeah,
becomes
for sure.
difficult to be able to follow. If you get interested in sort of one stream of something, and you can kind of like scratch the surface, and you might know like the one guy who's famous from that thing, but then there's 20 others that you don't know. And
Yeah,
then you feel bad because you didn't know like the number three guy is really the actually the best, and the number one guy is just, the marketing front of the whole movement.
and then YouTube tries to be helpful and starts to be
Yeah.
to throw. For example, this morning I watched a video about dungeon tiles, about making basic dungeon tiles.
Yep.
The next 300 video suggestions were: this is how you put up bathroom tiles. This is how you level your tiles.
Yep.
This is, I do not want to grout my tiles. Thank you. I just want.
And what kind of dungeon does YouTube think you're building? It's
one
like,
with a
yeah.
one with a bathroom, evidently. It's like,
Like, yeah, so, well, it's got to have a kitchen.
yeah, I guess.
Well, I mean, I've also liked that whenever I'm dungeoneering, I'm always like, well, there's got to be a latrine and there's got to be a kitchen, and because how do the people that survive in this dungeon exist? Like I always hated, I always bring this up, and I've mentioned it in one of my videos. I hate things like you open a locked door into a room with no other doors, and there's a live unicorn in there. It's like, how the fuck for 3,000 years has this unicorn survived in this damn room? Like
Magic.
the verisimilitude is just totally off, and I don't like that. It's like I like the world to make sense. One of my dungeon masters who I used to play as a player in his games, he was very good at like playing at creating like weird and wonderful distorted realities, where like the whole point was that it wasn't meant to make sense. But then when you play in a game where it's supposed to be real, and it's like, why is there a unicorn here? It's like that doesn't make any sense. And they go, well, unicorns are magical. It's like, don't try and explain it away with magic. Try and explain it away with there was a locked door with a unicorn behind it. That doesn't make any sense. Um, so yeah, like when you're designing dungeons, think about the space. Like, why is there no toilet in here? I mean, goblins got to go do number two, bro. Like, you don't just if they don't have a toilet, then it's got to be in the corners and down the sides, and there's got to be gutters filled with it. Like the whole place is just to be effluent everywhere, right?
Oh
Like
yeah.
that's great thematically. Like that's the whole reason why the dungeon smells the way it does, is because there's no goddamn latrine.
Okay. Campaign terrain raises a very good point. Who lit the torches in the locked room?
That's right.
Yeah, that's another big one.
Yeah, you see that in movies. It's like, is there a guy who went around in this ancient thing they've just found and lit all the torches? Like, you just walked in here and it hasn't been seen in 1,000 years. Like, who was here lighting torches? And then things like the oil lamps, and it's like, wouldn't this have dissipated over a period? Like, it wouldn't have been like it just would have dried out or disappeared
Oh
over
yeah, for
many
sure, for sure.
thousands of years. It wouldn't just light up.
Okay, so Tina Price has a suggestion. There used to be 100 unicorns, and that one ate the others. Yeah,
Correct.
yeah, that could
See
work.
that, but then you've got to have a room full of unicorn horn bones and things. Then it makes sense that it's the last surviving unicorn because it ate all the others. That makes perfect sense. But if it's an empty room with no doors, then it makes no sense.
Yeah, I'm guessing the unicorn would also have to poo somewhere, so yeah, that might be a problem.
Uh, but I love stuff like that where you have to have an argument about why the unicorn is in the room. It's like that to me is more fun than the game.
I know, I know, right?
It's like if your game is so bad that I'm having more fun arguing over the unicorn than I am playing the damn game. There's something wrong. I think
Yeah,
that's why a lot of people like having rules arguments, because they're more entertained by having a rules argument with the DM than they are by the game.
yeah, that's a big red flag.
Yeah, I mean, if you're having fun, you're just gonna let the fun continue. You're not gonna go, oh well, actually,
Yeah,
oh well, actually, they poop
rainbows. Yeah,
rainbows.
that solves it.
That's funny. That's hilarious.
Okay, so since the leads us of the unicorn problem,
Yes,
yeah,
Lisa single-handedly solved the unicorn problem.
fantasy philosophical
Um,
debates are the best. Yes, there. Yes, there.
yep.
So I think this is the last picture in your cover.
Okay, so this is the cover of the North Road. And so using the sort of um, thing I talked about, putting the camera in the weirdest position, you're right next to the foot of one of
Okay, yeah.
the characters.
I was wondering what that was because you've got the strap dagger in there and sword.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so if you scroll down, you can see the rest of the boot, um, and the rest of the characters on the road. So yeah, you're
Okay, so
right
this. Yeah.
next to their, yeah, so you can see their foot and then their sword. So that sort of creates a nice little frame around the moon because I love the moon. And the moon is creating the light for everything that's going through all the clouds. And then you can see the sort of arcing lightning in the background. That's that temple in the mountains we were talking about
Okay.
earlier. So it's all the elements of all the different modules are like in here. You can see a Sarlacon on the hill
Yeah, it's
there.
in the towards the right near the.
Yeah, and then you've got the castle of the Dark City, and you've got all these sort of bits. So it's like all the elements of the actual book are all in there. Um, and of course there is the moon motif does go through the book. So there's like the blue moon, red moon, like it's all these sort of things that go through. Um, so yeah, the Sarlacon in the distance, you can just see him on the hill. I love the Sarlacon. It was like my favorite thing. And then my favorite character in the book is Ahabet Sarlacon Hunter, who's this old lady with a hoe who has like a bag full of Sarlacon pies and meat pies and bombs that she uses to blow up Sarlacons. It's
Okay.
just she's so delicious, and I wish I could write a lot more. I'd want to do like a whole side thing where you go on an adventure with Ahabet Sarlacon Hunter. Now it's Ahabet because of the way the society is in the book, which you discover when you read it. But it's based on Ahab, and the Sarlacon is the white whale. So so it's a whole play and all. I love to just bring in elements of other sort of famous stories and ideas
Yeah.
and things and kind of remix them so that you're like everyone enjoys this little nuggets of cool things that you're always discovering. um yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's like those little references and inside jokes and stuff like that. They always add a lot of flavor.
Yeah, I don't know if it was in this book or one of the other things. There's a Seinfeld joke in there. I can't remember what it is. I just remember that we put a Seinfeld joke into one of them. Um, I just one of the NPCs or someone. Um, it could be like I can't remember what line of, but it might be something like not that there's something wrong with that or something like that might be in it somewhere. Um, just go to like Seinfeld fans will go, hey, I know what that is.
So, I mean, going over these pictures has been really educational, especially all the talk about the depth and the framing, especially that has been, got some wheels moving.
Yeah, like, it's fun to do and it's fun to talk about it. It's things that just keep on giving. Like this is like interesting things. Obviously, the whole idea is that you're on this road and there's interesting things along the road, and so the image is basically telling you what you're going to be getting in the book. Um, Obviously, as you browse through the internet, most people are not going to stop and take the time to look at the image, but as a sort of a quick view of it, you kind of like your mind it'll sit in your head there somewhere, and you might wake up in 3 in the morning and go, hang on a minute, why didn't I buy that book? Which is available at questgivers.com. I see there's a whole unicorn argument
Oh
happening
yeah,
in
yeah,
the chat
yeah. That's
now.
probably going to go on for the next 2 or 3 days. Don't worry about it.
You see how it works now. Your Discord is now going to be a whole unicorn chat for the next 4 or 5 days.
Yeah, that's perfect normal. Unicorn discussions happen more frequently than you think. Okay.
Schrodinger's unicorn. Oh man. Ay, ay, ay. Well, this is just a photo of like sort of my terrain when it's set up, what it looks like. Um, it's sort of worn, broken. So the brazier in the front is the top of a um you get those like water bottles with
Yep.
the pop-up sort of thing, and then there's a plastic thing on top of it, like a weird cup.
Yep.
It's one of those upside down, um, filled with broken up polystyrene, the little expanded polystyrene
Yep.
with the little spheres. So just filled with that and then painted, and with some
Yeah.
twigs stuck on the side.
I like the effect that the I don't know, it looks hot.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes people do fire the wrong way around. Like put it sort of the highlights as the red and then the lowlights as the white, which it's really should be the other way around. The hottest thing is white and the coldest thing is yellow, is red. Um, I see that a lot. People get it the wrong way around.
Oh yeah.
Um, so the thing I became famous for, if you can call me famous, is furniture in dungeons. Because obviously Scotty did all the actual dungeon tiles and all that sort of fabulous fixed stuff, but I was really the one who then goes, right, this place needs furniture because it's quite dull and uninteresting. It's just a gray floor.
Yeah, the goblins
Um,
cannot be sitting around on the floor only.
yeah, and of course that when what I discovered when I started doing this and started putting furniture in places is that players started to want to use the environment a lot more. So they wanted to jump up on chairs, use tables as shields and all that kind of stuff. And that was how I then developed 7D system, because games like D&D don't really have rules or mechanics for that kind of thing.
Mhm.
Um, and I realized that combat is really more about the situation than it is your skill. So if I'm standing behind a guy with a dagger and I have zero skill in dagger, but the guy is the best sword fighter in the world, but he doesn't know I'm there, I can stab him in the back
Yep, as many times as you
because
like.
as many times as I like, right? I don't need to be an expert. And so the rules are actually designed around what situation are you in, and you get points for being in a better situation. And then you roll dice based on the situation you're in rather than your skill. The more skill you have, the more dice you roll. So if you're better at stabbing in the back, if you're better at daggers, you roll more dice.
Yeah, fair.
But if you're standing in front of them where they can see you and they don't want to get hit, it's very difficult because who wants to stand there and get stabbed, right? No one. So they're not, it's going to be difficult to stab them. So the most difficult, then you got to roll d20s because you need ones in order to succeed. So it's
Oh, okay.
the most difficult roll is to roll d20s. So if you are level 0 in daggers, you're rolling a single d20 looking for a single one. So you've got a 5% chance of hitting them from the front. But at the back, you've got a 50-50 chance of being able to stab them with no ability whatsoever.
Okay.
So it like the actual mechanics change based on the situation you're in rather than your skill level. Your skill level gives you more bonuses effectively, but it doesn't make the situation better for you. And that was sort of my shift in how I like to play games, is make it more situational and less about the who has more in sword fighting, versus, like that's just like, as you know, having done sword fighting yourself, skill is one thing, but opportunity and situation are a completely different ball game.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. And I'm thinking one of the things with table, sorry, with furniture and stuff in terrain is uh, I can see why that would inspire people to use the environment more rather than if you just described it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and so you like one of the things you can have is improvised weapons. So a lot of my players They're useless at fighting with swords, but with a broken chair, they're amazing. So, the same situation with the dagger. You're standing behind the guy and he doesn't know you're there, and you're using a broken chair. You could roll 5d2s instead of 1d2. And so your chances of actually like smacking this dude is significantly higher.
Okay, fair
Um,
enough.
so yeah, all of those sort of things. So it then encourages you to go like, I'm going to smash this chair and use it as a stabby pole.
Yeah. Okay, Dungeon Matron is saying, I wonder if the barrel with the XXX is full of VHS porn tapes.
It actually has four X's on it, but you can't see the fourth X because it's round. Barrels are like the worst thing to actually craft because they're
Oh yeah,
actually
agreed.
curved. They're curved, so like you can't. Most things that you get as a crafting material are not curved in that way, and so it's very finicky and horrible. And I can't stand doing barrels. Scotty's really good at barrels, and Scotty's technique for barrels is really good. I tried to go a bit further, and I don't think I succeeded. But you know,
Uh,
it's like crates.
it reads as a barrel. It
Crates are
looks like.
hard too.
Really? What is it?
Mm. Well, you'd think it's a cube, but it's not.
No?
Yeah, because all the sort of like angular struts and things like that, and then like edging and crates become a nightmare.
I don't know. I
Um,
mean, I never found any particular problem with it.
yeah, it just depends on how you do them. If you want it to look like an actual crate, not just you painted some lines on a cube, which to me is like you didn't
Yeah,
actually make a
you
crate, you
painted
just painted a
a cube.
cube.
Uh, what I find it easier to do is literally kind of engrave the stuff with on XPS foam with a pencil.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Look,
you can literally
yes,
just draw
but
it and press it in while you're doing that, and you still end up with
yeah, but
a deep texture.
you're talking about, so I'm an additive person, not a subtractive person. So all my things are additive techniques. There's very
Okay.
few subtractive techniques in my videos. So subtractive meaning you're cutting something out of it,
Yeah,
rather than applying something to something else. um, so painting is an additive technique, whereas putting a line in it with a pencil into the is a subtractive
kind of
technique.
carving. Yeah. Well, I'm not religious.
Yeah.
I do both. So yeah, there's that.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's um there. Look, I'm not saying that my style is correct. It's just what I like to do. So, like, there's no such thing as the correct way to do it. There is no correct way to do barrels. There are no correct ways to do crates. There's DMG's way, which is usually useless, or someone else does better at another time in the future. But man, I was the first, so there.
Okay. So would you like to have a look at what everyone has been posting in Discord so far?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's jump in and boom. Okay, starting off with Lawrence with his dungeon tiles from his mega dungeon and the trap tiles he was working on.
Oh, that's cool. So I assume there must be some way of concealing them, um,
Yeah,
or flipping them out.
I think that's why they're below the level of the other tiles. I think he just replaces
Yeah,
them when they're triggered.
yeah. So is he? I can't see close enough because of my screen, but is he used like some sort of acrylic pour in the acid there?
Some kind of epoxy, I think. Yeah,
Okay, because I like the bubbles.
the bubbles are stickers, if I remember correctly.
Oh, okay.
So put the stickers in. Sorry, he made the outline of the pit, painted it, stuck the stickers on, which are the bubbles, painted those, and then poured something on it.
Okay, cool. I'm the guy who would sit there trying to invent a way to make bubbles into it, like blowing through a little pipe. while it's hardening. Like I'd like to make my life difficult. like
Yeah, that would
like I
that.
like I like shortcuts, but like I have to do it the difficult way first to know why the shortcuts are cool.
Yeah, I'm entirely with you on that one. I would not have thought of using stickers.
The stickers are a great idea.
Yeah,
But that's what all of this is, just ideas. YouTube is just the idea engine. It's like, like if you're just copying someone else, then your channel's never going to do anything. But if you come up with a new idea, then you can actually do quite well. Um, because people are fascinated by the idea. Um, and that's where the heart of Scotty's channel, why Scotty did so well, is because his ideas, every video has a great idea in it. Um, and obviously his presentation has improved over the years and all these sort of things, but like he's kept the kernel of like what his it's a great idea, and the way he presents is very cool, and he's kind of kept that all the way through, and I really enjoy
oh
that.
yeah, for sure. So let's see. Pillars from the same mega dungeon complex.
Well, it's like a sort of dwarven
Yeah, it
dwarven
has that
feel about it.
vibe to it. Yeah. Let's see. Okay, Little C was also BGD in the chat if I remember correctly.
Okay,
Okay,
so is this foam, or is it a roll? Is it rolled or is it penciled? Do you
I
know?
I think it's rolled.
Okay,
The sides are probably foam core and rolled. I suspect
okay.
the roof tiles are what do you call it? Corrugated cardboard. Not entirely
Oh,
sure about that
cool.
though.
Yeah, I used corrugated cardboard for rooftops, but I laid them flat so they were like dungeon tiles. Um,
Okay.
but yeah, I mean it's easy. It's easier when the thing is very close to the thing you want to represent. And cardboard is easy to get and is the cheapest construction material you're ever going to find. So I always default to cardboard before I use anything else. Can this be done with cardboard?
Yeah, I mean, the cardboard is extremely underrated in my opinion.
What I've used on cardboard to do texture, so to kind of do the stonework that he's got there, I use an embossing pen. So it's basically a solid metal nib
Okay.
pen that you then run into the cardboard, so you can get that same sort of subtractive technique, but using um, like the particle board that Wylock uses.
Yeah,
Um,
I've done that too. It takes texture surprisingly well.
Yeah, it's very good for that. So like even if you can't get XPS or you can't get foam, whatever, type of foam in your country, which there are countries where, it's hot and people don't get insulation foam, like Australia. Um, then you can use something like an embossing pen, or if you want to go the cheap route, you just get a ballpoint pen that doesn't work anymore. Um, and you just gum up the mechanism with some super glue or something so the nib no longer turns.
Yeah, I mean, uh, still with 1 millimeter cardboard, you don't you can even use a pen even with the ink still going. That it works fine.
Yeah, the thing with an embossing pen is that usually they have different size nibs, so you can get wider, whereas
Yeah,
most
that would make
ballpoints are all going to
yeah,
be the
that's
same
standard
size. Yeah,
size, and that's one. Yeah, but so definitely
yeah.
in that case, yeah, that would be very useful.
Yeah, I bought one in Japan when I was there. I think it was like $20 or something, but it had about 7 different nibs.
Oh, right, nice.
So of different sizes. Normally they use it for like doing on gold leaf and things like
Oh,
that.
wow, all right.
Um, to do that sort of embossing technique, but you can use it on cardboard. And the effects are very good actually.
Uh, I'll try to look for something like that. That sounds like a very useful tool to have.
What this needs is more junk. It needs more stuff. I mean, you've got everything you want there, but it kind of needs it needs that sort of uh, you know what I mean? It kind of like someone's lived here, so there's got to be
S-
like bits of them left. Like
s-
that's all that it needs. It's fabulous. Don't get me wrong. It's really cool. But it's like as I said before, I'm the kind of guy where it needs more it needs more detritus on it from the world.
Kind of like the string of garlic hanging near the door and
That's right. Yeah,
maybe
yeah, yeah,
a bench somewhere and stuff like that. Yeah.
yeah. Or there's a brick missing, and so you craft this like little view of the interior where this like brick is missing. Like I love that, and like there's a little rat. You can, if you look closely, you can see a little rat like staring back at you or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, small animals and stuff like that are fantastic for adding tiny details. It's like even if you put a little bird's nest somewhere or stuff like that, it really brings it to life.
Yeah, just no unicorns.
Yeah, definitely, and not in logs rooms at least. Okay, so this is something that Stefano from Chimera War Gaming is planning, so it's probably his next sculpt. The Misfortune Teller.
The misfortune zone.
Yeah, so it's probably going to
Are you
be.
able to zoom in a little bit on that? I can't really see.
One
Is
second.
it a is it a siege tower?
No, I think it's part of. He's doing this kind of Carnival of Chaos for Warframe
Oh, okay. So it's like a wagon.
kind of thing. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Okay, cool.
yeah. This as far as I can zoom in here. Sorry.
Okay, that's all right.
But yeah, if you look at his channel, Chimera War Gaming, he's got all these kinds of really weird, creepy builds, and they look fantastic. Okay, so let's cross from campaign
Weird,
terrain.
weird and creepy is just normal.
Yeah, extra weird and creepy and grungy is the term I wanted to use.
Grungy, yeah, yeah.
Okay, so someone has obviously been making lots of bricks.
Yeah, I love being an additive person. I like the idea of making thousands of bricks and manually building the thing brick by brick. It just has a different feel to it than, you just sort of moved a pencil across it.
The end result is definitely very different. But yeah,
Yeah.
I don't really have that much patience.
But
Okay,
the thing is, when you do something like that, it's like you're in the zone of doing it, and then you forget about your troubles. You forget about all the things that are happening in the world, right? That's the whole reason you're doing it, right?
yeah,
It's like you're not doing it for a deadline or because your boss said you had to make one, right? Or like there's people in the Discord that have demanded that I make a house. No, you're doing it because you want to do it, and when you're doing it, you just like the rest of the world kind of just fades away, and for that hour or so, you just like can veg out on this thing, and that's cool. That's cool. It doesn't matter what it is you're doing, whether it's stamp collecting or building miniature houses or collecting dog poo. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, the thing is that I can zone out on drawing the brickwork, but I have never managed to get that into laying the bricks.
Yeah, it's a special kind of meditation.
Okay, so let's see. We have another little house by Campaign Terrain
That's very cool.
that he set it for some time, but he never posted it yet. It's kind of cute. I like it.
Yeah, like it's um I, I'm I I'm a fan of the Sylvanian families, the like little woodland creatures that, you know,
The
they
bunnies and the
sell
stuff,
like
yeah.
all the, yeah, the little bunnies and things like that. And I like that sort of cutesy look of that sort of thing. And to me, what gives it the cutesiness is the little bushes. That's what actually gives
Okay.
it the cutesiness. So, like when we were looking at the previous one where I was talking about it needed stuff, it's like it needs something like that to kind of solidify like what it is. I mean, they're very obviously close in terms of what they are. But when you look at it from a standpoint of like what it is in terms of cutesy, then that's the little bushes is what kind of sells that.
Okay, BGD is saying, and when you finish laying your bricks, you remember all your troubles, and you're even in deeper because it took you so much damn time. Yep,
Yeah, damn
yep,
it, I
you're
didn't
not
pay
wrong.
my credit card. The cat needs feeding.
Okay, uh, one, oh, shingles. As we were saying, more shingles.
Yep, more shingles. And I like I obviously use popsicle sticks and things in my builds, but like if I was going to do um the subtractive technique and use XPS and whatever, I would shave thin things of XPS and make planks, individual planks that I would texture individual planks and then build with like that's the level of insane I would probably
Oh,
go to.
you are
It's probably a good thing that I don't have a proxon or any kind of phone.
yeah, that sounds like a good thing, yeah. It might get you stuck for a while.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so let's see. Some more reptiles by Lawrence Davies. So he's showing here the unactivated on the left and the activated on the right. I love
Is
the
it did he make the tennis? Is it like out of green stuff or something? Because I like the painting on it. It's really cool.
I think the tentacles are from Final Faction, I think, and
Oh,
the
okay.
paintwork is his. Yeah, I especially like how it goes from the blue to the green.
Yeah, I'm whenever I represent magic, I always use purple glitter. It's like to me that's magical. So my house has just got like every corner has a little bit of purple glitter in it.
Oh no, oh no no.
My house is magical.
It's coated in unicorn farts.
That's right. Yeah, unicorns fart purple glitter. That's how they make purple glitter. That's what's in the factory. It's just this unicorn they've trapped in there for 1,000 years farting purple glitter.
Okay, these are from hides from Meredith from Scatter Terrain. Okay,
So what is the is it toilet paper?
I guess so. It's a toilet paper or tissues or something like that.
Yeah, multi layers of tissues or something.
Yeah.
I love that sort of texture of things. As I said before, sometimes things are just too clean and then they don't look like what they're supposed to look like. But that, the first thing I thought of was drying hides, you know. So yeah, it works from that perspective.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I think a little dry brushing and they're really going to pop.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to meet the creature that had a purple hide though.
Maybe it was just too
It's
close
like
to possibly it was just too close to the unicorn.
that's right. I mean, obviously, in the tanning process they can change the color, but you know. Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, if you think about it from a historical standpoint, purple is a very difficult color to find.
Oh yeah, no kidding.
Um, so like everything that's of extreme value from before a certain time period in history, the extreme value is because it's purple or blue. Blue was very difficult to do as well.
Oh, Scatter Terrain is saying just fleece soaked in PVA and water.
Oh,
Then
cool.
then
Okay.
rubbed the wrong way. Aha.
Yeah, well that's what gives it that cool texture. I was thinking like it seemed like it was a little bit more than toilet paper, but maybe like scratched it up a bit or something. But yeah, the fleece makes sense.
All right. So we're saying,
No
yes.
unicorn rubbed the wrong way.
Steve's paintbrush. No, Steve also is a champion at painting miniatures.
It's a bit small because I'm seeing it small on my screen and then it's small on so I'm not. Let me see if I
Uh,
expand this window. It's a sci-fi model, isn't it?
it's a sci-fi model with a sea background kind of thing. Yeah. Let me see if there's anything. Ah, yes, here's a closer view.
Oh, there we go. Oh, that's cool. It's like an aquanaut
Uh
sort of.
huh.
That's very cool. Because see, now I get why there's waves and things in the background.
Yeah, Steve is.
But I love that. I love you see part of why I did that sort of theater terrain was because there's lots of people out there who are not building dungeons, but will be building backgrounds for their painted miniatures.
Yes, yes.
Um, And so, there's a cool way to do it, and you can swap out the backgrounds and put different things in the backgrounds. Or I even got some green cardboard so you could green screen the background and put whatever you like there as a
Yeah, right.
photo.
Yeah.
I love things that are different too. It's not just Warhammer 40K or D&D models. It's like something really cool and out there. Like the thing is interesting in and of itself, and it's not just another of something else.
Oh yeah, definitely. It looks kind of steampunk, kind of not, but
Yeah,
definitely
yeah,
interesting.
it's
Yeah.
it's steampunk-ish, but it's definitely not steampunk. I mean, it may very well be steampunk,
Well,
but to
could be.
me, it's like, yeah, it's that sort of Jules Verne,
Kind of thing. Yeah.
30,000 Leagues, like one of those sort of,
But yeah, and the sea backdrop is a brilliant idea.
yeah.
Okay, so this one is from Earthman Brick, and it's Toilet Mimics on Parade.
That's fabulous. This is why you got to have a latrine in your dungeon so you can use all your toilet. I love the eyeball one.
Oh yeah.
That's fabulous.
There's one which with a nose which is looks very unfortunate.
Yeah, the what I
Sad
like about
mimic.
them, what I like about them is they're all grumpy, but if you were mimicking a toilet, wouldn't you also be grumpy? You're
For sure, yeah.
always having a shit day, it's like the worst day ever every day.
Yeah.
Everybody just comes in and shits all over me.
Okay,
No,
let's
I,
see.
I love the like when I was talking about ideas, like that's a fabulous idea for a video. Like if you've got a YouTube channel, that has to be a video.
It,
Like that's
I,
because who else has done toilet mimics? No one has done toilet mimics.
yeah, I think he's done a couple of videos about them already. So yeah, that angle is covered. YouTube is the YouTube gods have been fed.
Like I'm already like gonna write this down to watch it later.
Yeah, that's Earthman Brick's channel. So yeah, should be easy to find. But you
Eric,
can
what's it? Eric Von Brick?
no Earthman Brick.
Ericman Brick?
Earthman
Eritman.
Earthman. Yeah,
Okay.
Earthman Brick. I'll send you the link later.
Okay, you can send me a link here.
Okay,
Links are easy.
easy. Yeah.
Remembering is hard. Damn you, computers.
Okay, next quest board terrain. Boom. Okay, see a work in progress dungeon.
That's cool. So is the whole thing one piece or is it modules?
I have no idea.
What's really cool, like there was someone who was doing like modular like dungeon pieces. So you would have a piece like this is one piece of the dungeon. And then you can like they all connect, like all the corridors connect at a certain point, and you could rotate them and do that sort of thing.
Okay.
So I don't know if that's what this is, but it still looks cool.
Oh, I remember this one. This one is from also from quest board terrain. It's from an older guild build thingy.
Ah, they're all guild builds.
Yeah.
I used to love those. It was just, it's become one of those things where you got to run, finding the time to run and when you got to hundreds of entries,
Yeah.
it's like everyone ends up losing except one guy. It's like, oh, you feel bad about picking a winner.
Yeah. I mean, the number of and the quality of the entries was something amazing.
Yeah, I mean, look, it started to be like, like, geez, I don't know if we're a museum or a competition entry. It's like, some of these things are amazing. Like, how do you tell which one is better? I mean, like they're just so good. It's like you're doing someone a disservice by picking someone else, and that's where the problem started to become. It just like obviously in the community there's always someone who has a little bit more skill in a certain area, and when they do a thing you're like, wow, that skill has really floated to the surface. um and I always disliked a thing where if I made a video and someone said, I don't think I could do that, then I would feel that my video wasn't working. I always wanted that someone watching my video goes, well, I can do that. Like I can do that. That's easy. That's what I wanted people to feel. But then sometimes when you see like some older channels like Terranscapes, who doesn't do
Hmm.
videos anymore, I mean, his stuff is just beyond insanely detailed and just amazing. And even I'm sitting there going, I don't know if I could actually do that. It's like, I could, and I can appreciate what he's done, but I don't want to do that. And it's like, I don't want my videos to feel that way. I don't want someone to watch that and go, ooh, I don't know. It's amazing, but I could never do that. That's the wrong thing you want
Yep.
someone watching
Wrong
your
takeaway.
videos.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you should be making a channel where it's just like terrain porn. Then it's like, we don't care how this was built. It's amazing. That's a totally different channel.
Yep. Uh, I don't think there are many of that sort. There
No,
are a few that I can think of, but yeah, it's usually the kind of projects. Yes, it's like you said with cars earlier. It's like I would never sink the time into making this, but it looks amazing.
yeah. Well, I mean, you think about Dwarven Forge, we talked about, how your art, like, is more valuable when it's a product. But you look at Dwarven Forge, there's a guy who is an art student or art major or art whatever, um, who turned his art into a saleable product that people use. He loves crafting that sort of stuff, and good on him. It's like he, spawned an entire creative community of people who didn't want to buy stuff and they want to make their own. Um, and also you can buy stuff if you want. It's like, it's you're getting the best of both worlds. You're getting more people doing more cool stuff, and you've got a great product you can buy and use on your table if you want.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah, for sure.
but if he was just by the side of the road selling Dwarven Forge, people go, why would I buy these weird small bookends?
Yeah, I got you. Okay, in the meantime, some sci-fi terrain from Meredith. Scattered terrain.
I can see the Coke can that's below that. That's a really cool use of a Coke can. If that's what they did. If they didn't, then they've crafted a really cool Coke can in order to make a thing. But it's great. It really, like, this is what's cool when I talk about ideas. It's like you take a thing that isn't a thing and make it into another
Oh yeah.
thing. That, like, you can see the idea that happened. The guy was looking at the Coke can going, hang on a minute, if I just put a cardboard thing in a straw, you know and now it looks fabulous. Like, it looks really, really good.
Yeah, I think there's some more use of Final Faction toys in here to make details.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
like
it's like the YouTuber in me is, why didn't I think of that?
I know, right?
Now I have to make a better Coke can version of me.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah,
There's
and
some
to see the
nice detail on
great
there.
the great texture of the lid that he's used at the bottom. um see, like, you don't have to, like, then you don't have to use a subtractive technique. You can just use a found thing as
Yeah,
representative of the texture you want.
yeah, yeah, for sure. That makes sense. Oh, this set is turning out really nice.
It's like a granny grating, I think. It
Yep,
looks like he's used granny grating there.
in the walkways or whatever there. Uh, yeah, I think they're walkways.
Yeah, it just needs the 4 red X's on it. Just to keep
Okay.
keep with the theme.
Okay, so this is again Meredith's rodent of unusual size in space. It's
So is
like
that a it's
it's
a like a rat or something wearing a
a tactical
wearing a
helmet
helmet?
of some kind, yeah.
Cool. So it's like a cyber rat.
Kind of, yeah, I guess.
Well, you know how much I love rats, so
Yeah.
I instantly want this thing. Rat with gun attached.
It's a tactical rat.
tactical rats. Oh, all rats are tactical rats, except the armed ones. They're more tactical rats. No, that's really cool. I really like that. Thank you for putting that out into the universe.
Okay, and this is some kind of hoverboard
Where's
thing,
my
and
hoverboard? Isn't there a song about that?
yeah, I believe there is, yeah. Yeah, that movie got my expectations so high.
That's very cool.
And okay, this is the all right. So this was a water filter, and
Ah, I was thinking it might have been like one of those hair curler things where they pulled out all the inner grating, but yeah, makes sense.
the console down the bottom looks really interesting. I think it's pins and beads, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I'm kind of all of a sudden I just wanted to make a miniature arcade machine with like little pins as the joysticks and workable buttons.
Nah,
Yeah, I wanted to do that in my videos. I was thinking, oh, the next phase of my videos is to make like furniture with workable drawers and workable hinges and all that sort of thing. And then it was like, nah, now we're going past the point of I can do that.
that would be a bit much, to be honest.
Is that a colored hot glue stick?
I'm not sure if
I
it's
like guessing. I like guessing what the material is in there, but it looks like they've just they put a hot glue stick in there, whether you
it is a
painted it
hot
or.
glue stick. I'm not sure if it's painted or not because let me see.
Oh, is there a light? Is there a light underneath? Is it?
There's a light underneath here, so
Oh, okay, that's very cool. That's very cool.
Meredith is doing this for this challenge we're running on Discord, which is Let There Be Light. We should be having
Okay.
the final results out tomorrow.
Well, it's the only one that I've seen, so therefore it's the winner.
And I guess these are some vats or barrels or things like that.
Looks like Gah.
Ah,
Yeah, from Star Trek, the Klingon food. Gah.
alright, yeah, I'm not really into Star Trek, but yeah.
Not into Star Trek.
Nope.
Cancel the stream right now. What the hell? Can't believe we've been talking to a guy for 3 hours and he doesn't like Star Trek.
I'm not into it. I didn't say I didn't like it.
I'll forgive you this time.
Okay, let's see. Oh, yeah, some saw traps.
Oh, cool. Uh, it's like those plugs you put into thing you just I think that's what those are.
I'm not entirely sure. I can think of some ways to cut PVC pipe into that shape, but I'm pretty sure that's not it.
No, I thought it was there's like IKEA things which you push into like you push it into holes where there've been like a socket or
Some kind
something.
of locking
Yeah.
thing. I forgot what the name was. Yeah,
I love going to IKEA and looking through their bits. What kind of bits can I get from IKEA? I'm not interested in the furniture. I'm just interested in the connectors and the
yeah, because
like all
they
that
have
kind of
interesting
stuff.
shapes. Yeah.
That's right. Like, we'll be in an IKEA and I go, oh, look at this. My wife goes, why would we ever need that? So it's not the thing, it's what comes with the thing.
Okay, so this one is by Kim from Questboard Terrain. She does have this knack for finding things to put together that way.
That's very cool. It reminds me of the um that movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger when he's on Mars, where the
Total
Benny is driving that like drilling machine.
Total Recall. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and Labyrinth, where you've got like the little goblin creatures
Yes.
running that like thing down the corridor.
Okay, so let's see. So this is from Palpatelia. Let's see if we can. And I need to turn off the sound every time because it can get YouTube can get pretty upset with them with strange music.
Yeah.
But these are some miniatures he's building with plastic parts and found objects like roots, seed pods, and things like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. No, it's very like building miniatures at scale is very difficult to do. So I have like great admiration for anybody who does that. Like I'm one of these people like I'll build it big and then someone can shrink it small. And that someone will not be me.
This is really good. These are for a game called The Wield. It's a small
Wild.
independent game. Yeah, it's
Okay,
got these strange animal plant hybrids and yeah, pretty
cool.
interesting. Let's see
As a
the.
is a skirmish game or an
It's a
RPG
skirmish
or
game. Yeah.
okay, cool.
Oh, hello.
I'm thinking of that again from Labyrinth, that sort of old little goblin lady who in the trash yard has got all that stuff on her back.
Yeah, yeah,
Hello, dear.
yeah.
Would you like a teddy bear? Been ignoring the chat.
Okay, and the idea of
Costco broth caps. I thought it would be something like that. Why do we have so much broth in the house? I needed the broth caps.
okay, this is again from Meredith from Scatter Terrain. In the idea of set the camera in an odd place. I did this charcoal as part of an art challenge to include the following: cat, dog, bridge, corn, tree, scuba diver. What?
And a scuba diver. Trying to find the scuba diver.
I think the scuba diver is
Sorry, it's small and blurred, so I can't really see all the detail. I mean, I like the perspective that you can see into like all the sort of corn or whatever that because I can't see the detail. I really like that.
okay.
That's very cool.
I think you're looking through the scuba diver's mask.
Ah, see, it's right in front of you and you can't see it.
Okay, the cat is also very well hidden.
Yeah, I can see the cat on top of the bridge.
I think that's the dog. The cat is sitting
Is
on
it? Oh,
the right
okay.
hand side. Yeah.
Sorry, because it's so small on my screen, I can't see it very well.
Yeah, I think you're only getting it about half size. I think. Yeah.
Probably even a quarter.
Oh.
I'm on my screen where I'm sitting is small. I've got four screens on my computer, and this is my small one because my computer is over there.
Oh, okay. Okay, I got you. Okay, and now from Full Moon Crafting Studios, kind of mad scientist laboratory kind of thing.
Oh yeah, that's the one that Professor Dungeon Master used as his mad scientist in Frankenstein.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking, where have I seen that guy before? You see, this is cool. Like a table full of stuff, dead things, bottles. Like there's been a guy here doing something.
Yep.
Like that. It's telling a story. This person had their face cut off for sure.
Yeah, someone
It's
definitely
very,
got messy over here.
it's very Dexter.
Yeah. I mean, the use of colors is very vivid. I mean, there isn't any color that stands out except for the red in most cases.
Yeah, and the green, but it's like it draws your eye to the carnage, which is
Yep.
great.
I think that was his intention all along.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, so Mia, some pretty stones.
Some markers.
Yeah. Oh, the texture on the back is tiny. Do you mark those individually?
Well, I mean, I would assume these are very, very, very small. They must be like about this big
Oh, no idea. But I mean, yeah,
because it
that's
wouldn't be more than about 3 centimeters high. I think
uh,
you've got a 25 mil base.
assuming that's a 25 mil base, it could be larger, but
Assuming
yeah.
it could be. I mean, they could be 3 foot wide. I don't know. But I mean, getting that kind of little detail on a thing that small is just it's
Oh yeah,
very,
for sure.
very good.
And kobold, I guess, or a tiny lizard person with a spanner.
He's got to go and do his job.
Okay, that was some fantastic work, everyone.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much for sharing all your wonderful work. It's it's always improved when other people see it.
Yeah, I mean, and we're constantly sharing the work in progress and stuff over Discord, so we're always bouncing ideas off, and yeah, I really love these showcases.
Yeah, no, I mean that's part of this whole community is the sharing aspect of it. I mean, that was the Tabletop Crafters Guild. Like the whole thing was we just want people to show their stuff. Like that's it's one thing for people to sit back and watch our videos. It's another thing for us to sit back and watch what they've done with
Yep.
them. That's part of the fun, really.
Yeah, for sure. Gareth, I think we should be calling it a day pretty soon because I've already kept you for more than 3 hours.
Yeah, I know.
It's been a pleasure talking to you.
No, it's been great fun, Carl. Thank you very much for having me on.
Ah,
I like what you do with interviewing all the different personalities from our community. It really helps improve and seeing people outside of the construct of their
oh
videos.
yeah, for sure.
So you kind of get a sense of who the person is rather than who they try to make themselves look like in their videos.
Yeah, for sure. But it's like I told you before. It's like the live streams are just an excuse for me to talk to interesting people. So yeah.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's
and
right.
if you would like to come back again another time, I would definitely love to hear more about your ideas about
Yeah,
anything.
I'm free at 3.
Yeah. I might need a little nap first, just because
Yeah,
it's 2 in the morning over here.
yeah. It's
But
only it's only noon. What are you talking about? Yeah, it's just for the people in the chat. Just realize that these sort of things have to get organized across global time zones, daylight savings. There's a lot that goes into organizing. Just two people sitting and having a 3-hour chat. It's I have to share all the photos with him, and he has to put all the things together. So Carl does a lot of background work that
it's juggling
I think
mostly. It's not that much work. It's just a lot
yeah,
of
he's
juggling.
he's he's a I've done it myself, so I know how much juggling there is. So he's just being modest at this point. Um, but yeah, look, I'm appreciative of what you're doing, and I like what you're doing, and more power to you, man. More power to you.
Wait, just a sec.
And for the weirdos in the chat, that's enough about unicorns. Go home.
No, it's okay. You can just keep
Buy me a
talking about
sandwich.
unicorns.
You can if you buy this book at questgivers.com, you buy myself and my son and my wife and Scotty's wife a sandwich. There you go.
Yeah, go ahead and do that. But does it come with a free unicorn?
No, there's no unicorns. Unfortunately, there are 0 unicorns in the North Road. Oh
Oh,
wait, no, there's not. No, there's not.
that's okay. That's still going to get it eventually, probably.
The unicorn of your imagination will fart magic into this book.
Yeah, this is going to become a thing now. This is for sure going to become a thing.
I'm gonna have to cut this down.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, again, Gareth, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
It's been a
And
pleasure.
thanks everyone for joining us.
See ya.
See ya. Bye bye.